Chapter 923. The Desolate Cliff. The Desolate Cliff was a barren area in the depths of the Western Desolate region. Due to its unique topography, this area was divided into two levels. The higher level was in the west, while the lower level was in the east. The cliff stretched for thousands of miles, and one could not see the end of it. The word, cliff, in the Desolate Cliff was derived from this place. At this moment, a young man in black robes was seated on a tall rock at the edge of the cliff. His eyes were slightly shut, and his breathing was orderly. The energy in the world flowed into his body as he breathed, and after some refinement, it became a part of him. After a long time, Xiao Yan slowly opened his eyes. A lightning-like light flashed in the depths of his pitch-black eyes, as he looked straight towards the east. In half a year's time, it would be the date he had agreed to meet with the four great sections. At that time, the grudge between him and the four great sects would be settled. I wonder how that fellow Luo Jin is doing. He is also training in the western region, but I have never heard any news about him. I wonder if he will also come to the opening of the Heaven-End Ancient Tomb this time? When the four large sects were mentioned, Xiao Yan naturally recalled Luo Jin. Back then, that fellow had faced the four large sects with him. This time around, Xiao Yan's heart would feel that something was missing if the latter was not present when he met the four large sects once again. With his current strength, he no longer feared the sect leaders of the four great sections. Of course, Yiluotian was an exception. Even he could not see through the latter's strength. Moreover, Yiluotian's strange methods were truly troublesome. Amongst the four of them, he was the one who hid his strength the best. Even so, if Luo Jin was not present, even if he could deal with the four great sects alone, he would still feel that it was meaningless. On the contrary, if Luo Jin was present, the two of them would take action together, and the grudge from back then would be completely settled. As for the Tianju Ancient Tomb, the place where this desolate cliff was located was the entrance to the Tianju Ancient Tomb. There was still half a year until the agreed time. Xiao Yan was coincidentally bored and had nothing to do. Hence, he already had a plan in his heart. Just like his original objective for coming to the Western Desolate region, would he be able to open the Heaven-End Ancient Tomb with the Heaven-End steps alone? Whether he could succeed or not, he would know with a try. Xiao Yan did as he thought. His body moved and he leaped down from the cliff. The whistling wind blew past Xiao Yan's ears. In the blink of an eye, they had already landed on the ground. Then, Xiao Yan turned around and looked behind him. There was a row of cliffs that were as straight as a wall. The steep cliffs spanned thousands of miles, and the steep slopes were impossible to climb. The sky was filled with rugged rocks and yellow sand. There was not the slightest bit of life in the world. The desolation here was far beyond the imagination of ordinary people. What was even more unimaginable was that in this barren land, there was actually a great opportunity. From where Xiao Yan was standing, he could clearly see that between the cliff and the land below his feet, there was a huge gully that was as deep as an abyss. Rocks fell, and one could not even hear the sound of them hitting the ground. Xiao Yan directly ignored this. He lifted his gaze and looked directly at the cliff opposite him. There was a small piece of strange rock that was spat out from the cliff. It was less than a meter long and several feet wide. It looked like the entrance of a huge door, except that one could not see the entrance of the so-called huge door. This was the result of Xiao Yan's search for a few days. At this place, the sky and ground were the same. There were no extra signs between the cliffs on both sides. Not to mention that he had never been here before. Even if an acquaintance came here, they might not be able to distinguish the direction. His figure moved and arrived in front of the protruding strange rock. A trace of caution rose in Xiao Yan's heart. Soon after, the soles of his feet gently landed on the strange rock. Buzz! The instant Xiao Yan landed on the strange rock, the cliff in front of him suddenly flashed with light. The cliff trembled, and at the same time, Xiao Yan was surprised. As his expression changed, he subconsciously used the sky extinction steps and hurriedly retreated. After all, this was a cave left behind by an origin transformation expert. Even though it had been almost 1,000 years, Xiao Yan still did not dare to be careless. The instant Xiao Yan used the sky extinction steps, the cliff above the strange rock suddenly trembled. A loud rumbling sound shook the world. Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes, but a smile rose from the corners of his mouth. The door to the ancient tomb of Tianju had finally opened. The stone door was opened and the originally complete cliff split apart from the middle. It entered the deep parts of the cliff. After which, a substance-like energy curtain appeared in front of Xiao Yan's eyes. This is the entrance to the ancient tomb of Tianju. Xiao Yan's heart trembled. He could not help but be emotionally moved. The ancient tomb of Tianju was something he had heard about in the southern region. He had wanted to see it for himself since a long time ago. Now that he had seen it, he could not help but be excited. However, although the entrance had already appeared before Xiao Yan's eyes, he first needed to break through the light screen if he wanted to enter the tomb. Not long after the light screen rose, Xiao Yan clearly saw that the originally powerful light screen flickered slightly. The power on it had decreased by quite a bit. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yan did not need to think to know that it was impossible for this to be caused by the erosion of time. The reason why the strength on the light curtain had weakened was likely because he had used the Sky Absolute steps. As for the remaining strength, it was likely that it would require the other two Do techniques of Tianju to remove it. Sky Extinction Palm and Sky Extinction Finger. Although these two Do skills are both human-ranked Do skills, since the Sky Extinction steps can bring about such a shocking amplification effect, I'm afraid that the other two Do skills will not be much inferior. At that time, I will have to be careful when facing Chen Zhan and Wu Jitian. A thought flashed across his mind. Soon after, Xiao Yan picked up his gaze and looked at the light screen in front of him. He could talk about the future in the future. However, right now, Xiao Yan could not help but want to try and see if he had the chance to break the light screen with his own strength. Even if it was just a small gap, it would be enough for Xiao Yan to do a lot of things. As soon as he thought of doing it, the Do Qi in his body rose. At the same time, Xiao Yan suddenly clenched his fists tightly. Powerful energy rapidly gathered in his palms. Soon after, his footsteps changed and his body instantly turned into a bolt of lightning. In just an instant, he had already appeared in front of the light screen. He clenched his fists tightly and violently swung them at the light screen in front of him. Ha! With a loud roar, powerful energy immediately erupted from Xiao Yan's fists and violently bombarded the light screen. Hum hum hum. However, the final result caused Xiao Yan to be a little stunned. Such an enormous strength was something that even a 7-star Do D would not dare to easily face. However, even though this was the case, not even the slightest ripple was formed after it struck the light curtain. Instead, the surrounding empty space was instantly shattered by this frightening strength. This? Xiao Yan was stunned. Soon after, he clenched his teeth tightly. The Do Qi in his body once again surged. This time around, he had also used the Strength Elephant skill that he had already mastered. Strength Elephant skill, break for me! Clang! The powerful force violently bombarded the light screen. Even though this attack was not Xiao Yan's full strength, it was enough to cause an 8-star Do D to pay attention to it. However, the final result was still unsatisfactory. Compared to the previous time, a layer of shallow energy ripple appeared on the light screen this time around. However, it disappeared in an instant. Soon after, just as Xiao Yan clenched his teeth and was about to attack again, a powerful force was transmitted from his fist without any warning. With just one attack, it sent him flying. Chapter 924. Clang! Accompanied by an earth-shaking loud sound, a powerful energy storm also swept across the short continent in the desolate horizon. In an instant, the flying sand and the desolate flowing wind that flew between the sky and the earth disappeared in an instant. The sky regained its silence for a short period of time. Chi! Soon after, a black figure suddenly flew past during this short period of silence. Only when it was 1,000 feet away did it stop in a somewhat miserable manner. It was Xiao Yan. 3 days had passed since the opening of the old tomb. On the day that the old tomb was opened, Xiao Yan had already used all his strength in an attempt to open the old tomb. However, the final result was that other than leaving a circle of faint ripples on the energy light curtain, nothing else was left behind. Instead, when his Do technique was broken by the light curtain, the rebound force would send Xiao Yan flying. Fortunately, although the force was strong, Xiao Yan was not injured. However, after continuously trying for tens of times, Xiao Yan finally understood that it was impossible to open the old tomb before he gathered the 3 famous Do techniques of Tianju. Therefore, Xiao Yan simply gave up on the idea of opening the old tomb. Instead, he used the light curtain to begin practicing the newly obtained Do technique, the Desolation Finger. As a high-level spirit Do technique, the Desolation Finger was not easy to practice. Most of these Do techniques had a common characteristic, which was that they were easy to learn but difficult to master. Even if one could use the experience left behind in the scroll to use it, one would still need a large amount of time and the accumulation of actual combat experience in order to truly understand the essence of the Do technique. There was still half a year until the 1-year agreement. Xiao Yan naturally did not lack time. As for actual combat, it merely referred to the accumulation of experience from the collision of energy. From an objective point of view, one would have a clearer understanding of one's control of the Do technique. Therefore, this light curtain had undoubtedly become Xiao Yan's best training stone. Of course, other than practicing the Desolation Finger, Xiao Yan did not easily neglect the Golden Elephant skill. The Golden Elephant skill was a defensive Do technique of the 4 Saint Elephant display skill. Its requirement on one's physical strength was also ridiculously high. The Force Elephant formula emphasized on converging the energy in one's body into a single point, condensing it within one's body, and accumulating it before unleashing it. There was no doubt that it was immensely beneficial to battle. As for the Golden Elephant mantra, it was different from condensing. The latter was to disperse the energy in one's body. Of course, this kind of dispersion was not without order. Instead, it was to disperse the energy in one's body to every part of one's body. There was a special connection between the different parts of one's body, thus achieving the effect of protecting one's body in all aspects. Other than this, the Golden Elephant skill was able to unleash the greatest amount of force. It was just like when he had fought against the 8-star Do D back then. He had unleashed his force and agglomerated a layer of nearly substance-like defensive barrier on the surface of his body. His control over his force was so high that it was frightening. Last time, Xiao Yan had also used all of his strength in order to successfully agglomerate it. Even so, its defensive strength was extremely powerful. It was difficult to imagine just how frightening its defensive strength would be if Xiao Yan was able to master the Golden Elephant skill one day. Although it was beautiful to imagine, Xiao Yan still needed to train bitterly regardless of what the future was like. Only by blooming in the hellfire would he be able to be unafraid of the fireworks of the human world. As the Do techniques in his hands were released time and time again, the Do Qi within Xiao Yan's body was also repeatedly recovering. Under this repeated cycle of exhaustion, an unknown strange feeling rose from the bottom of Xiao Yan's heart. Time passed in a flash and 1 month passed. After a month of continuous training, Xiao Yan's control over the Desolate Finger and the Golden Elephant skill had become increasingly proficient. This was especially the case for the Desolate Finger. Although it was a high-level spirit Do technique, it was still a Do technique that mainly used up Do Qi. After repeated training, his progress was naturally incomparably fast. On the other hand, the Golden Elephant skill had harsh requirements on one's physical body. With Xiao Yan's current physical strength, he could only barely agglomerate a layer of pale yellow light barrier on the surface of his body. This was the result of a month of hard work. Although the process was difficult, Xiao Yan was able to clearly sense the powerful defense that the Golden Elephant skill gave him. That kind of strength was difficult to break even with Do Qi. As expected, after experiencing an intense collision with the energy light barrier, Xiao Yan's body was actually forcefully stabilized on the spot this time around. He was not even the slightest bit pushed back by the rebounding force. Even though this had already caused Xiao Yan to perspire profusely and exhaust a lot of his physical strength, the result of this was likely something that even an ordinary 9-star Do D would be unable to help but be amazed by. Currently, Xiao Yan was able to unleash 70% of the Desolate Finger's strength under his full strength. To be able to train to such an extent within a month was already extremely shocking. Moreover, Xiao Yan was training 2 Do techniques at the same time. 70% of the Desolate Finger and 40% of the Golden Elephant skill. Even though it was not much, it was still able to unleash 40% of the Desolate Finger. Compared to the former, the achievement of the Golden Elephant skill seemed to surprise Xiao Yan even more. Desolate Finger. In the air, Xiao Yan's 10 fingers formed a seal. The majestic Do Qi in his body immediately surged out and swiftly poured into the enormous bright red energy finger above his head. At the same time, a powerful energy pressure continuously spread out from it. Soon after, when the energy within the finger had reached its peak, Xiao Yan let out an explosive cry from the bottom of his heart. Immediately, the enormous finger above his head suddenly charged forward. Soon after, it violently smashed into the energy light barrier of the ancient tomb. Bang! Soon after, the instant the enormous energy finger exploded, a frightening energy was released. The powerful energy stirred up circular energy ripples on the light barrier. However, Those ripples quickly disappeared. At the same time, a powerful energy storm was also emitted from the light barrier. It carried the powerful energy that was brought about by the explosion of the energy finger and swept outwards. Ha! Golden Elephant Skill. Activate. Xiao Yan let out an explosive cry in his heart. Almost at the same time, a powerful force swiftly agglomerated all over his body. In the blink of an eye, it agglomerated into a thin layer of yellow light barrier on the surface of Xiao Yan's body. Soon after, the powerful energy storm came attacking. Crack! The instant this energy collided with Xiao Yan's body, a cracking sound that only he could hear was emitted from deep within Xiao Yan's body, even though the golden elephant skill had not been broken. In an instant, Xiao Yan's eyes suddenly hardened. His breathing also involuntarily became sluggish. That mysterious cracking sound was the result of the barrier between him and a 6-star Do-D suddenly breaking at this moment. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 925. On the broken cliff, Xiao Yan's head was covered by the strong wind as he sat cross-legged. The extremely hot summer and the sand that was blowing against his body were carelessly ignored by him. Sensing the rising aura within his body, a joy involuntarily surfaced in Xiao Yan's eyes. After the countless number of battles, his cultivation had finally followed suit and gradually rose. Now it was time for success. A 6-star Do-D. Once he advanced to the rank of a 6-star Do-D, it meant that his fighting strength would once again soar. This would also allow him to obtain an even greater reward when he opened the Tianju ancient tomb 5 months later. He might even be able to obtain the Gui Yuan skill scroll in the hands of Tianju. Of course, other than this, there was also the inheritance of Tianju. That thing was also an extremely alluring existence. With joy in his heart, Xiao Yan sat cross-legged. He swept away all the messy thoughts in his mind. His breathing gradually became calm and orderly. The great waves in his heart also gradually recovered its calmness. His pair of dark black eyes were as black as a deep pool. The bottomless depth caused people to feel that they were even more mysterious. This wasteland was located in an extremely desolate area. Its environment was even harsher and more dangerous than other places. Hence, Xiao Yan was not worried that someone would come here and disturb him. Hence, he did not find another place to hide during his advancement this time around. Additionally, although the environment of this wasteland was harsh, it had the advantage of being extremely rich in fire affinity energy. Training in this place would undoubtedly have a certain amplification effect on Xiao Yan. Regardless of whether it was his training speed or the degree of condensation of his Do-Qi, it would all increase. Hence, Xiao Yan no longer procrastinated. Borrowing the rising aura within his body, his hands swiftly formed the training seal. A thought passed through his mind and the flame art Qi method within his body immediately began to circulate. Immediately, all the fire affinity energy in this area suddenly became violent at this moment. It was as though they had been attracted by something as they wildly gathered toward Xiao Yan at the edge of the broken cliff. Following the circulation of the Qi method, the heavenly flame within Xiao Yan's body also swelled. It moved along the various Qi paths in his body and swiftly surged upward. Finally, it directly charged out from the top of Xiao Yan's head. The dense white flame twisted and spiraled before transforming into a white-colored long fire dragon that coiled around Xiao Yan. It lifted its head to the sky and opened its large mouth. A long soundless roar was emitted from its mouth. The powerful fire affinity energy in this area began to wildly gather. After which, it was swallowed by the large fire dragon. After some refinement, it finally flowed into Xiao Yan's body. Under this unceasing influx of energy, Xiao Yan's aura also swiftly soared. The vortex space within his body also gradually expanded under the unceasing influx of enormous Do-Qi. At the same time in the northern region. At this very moment, on a certain desolate small island in the endless northern sea, there was a pretty lady wearing a white dress. Her long hair reached her waist, and her entire body emitted a fairy-like aura. Her eyebrows were knitted together as she looked at the endless sea region in front of her. Her heart was solemn. Just what kind of place is this? Why is this sea region so big that even I am unable to cross it with my strength? During this 1 year, the lady had already tried various methods. However, she was ultimately unable to cross this endless sea region. This small island seemed to have cast a curse on her. Regardless of how hard she tried, she could only helplessly withdraw in the end. After 1 year, Regardless of how unwilling she was in her heart, she needed to clearly recognize her current situation. She clearly understood that the reason she was unable to cross this sea region was ultimately due to the problem of her strength. If she really wanted to cross this sea region, the best method was to work hard and train. Only by raising her strength would she have the opportunity to leave this place. At that time, she would also be able to search for the person in her heart. However, the only thing that the lady could do now was to temporarily peacefully stay on this island and train wholeheartedly. Time flew by quickly. In the blink of an eye, 3 months had passed. Only at this moment did Xiao Yan, who had been immersed in his training, gradually wake up. At this moment, the aura within his body had already stepped onto a new level. 6-star Do D. There was an enormous gap between each star in the Do D class. As the saying went, the slightest mistake could lead to a difference of 1,000 miles. This was fully reflected in the realm of an expert. Normally speaking, given Xiao Yan's current strength, an initial 6-star Do D, an ordinary person would not have the slightest chance of victory when facing an intermediate 6-star Do D like Qin Yun. However, Xiao Yan was different. Regardless of whether it was his physical constitution or the thickness of his strength, his fighting strength far exceeded that of an expert of the same class. When he was an advanced 5-star Do D, he was able to kill an advanced 8-star Do D. His strength was comparable to a quasi-9-star Do D. Currently, Xiao Yan had broken through to a 6-star Do D. Every aspect of his body had been strengthened from inside out. The great strength of his fighting strength had caused him to be comparable to an ordinary 9-star Do D. Such strength would definitely be considered top tier when placed among the experts in the heaven-grade ancient tomb this time around. Xiao Yan slowly opened his eyes beside the broken cliff. He sensed the surging Do Qi within his body. His hands were opened slightly before they were slowly closed. Although there was nothing in his palm, Xiao Yan could still sense a strength that seemed to be there and not there. The empty space between his palms was slightly distorted. Although it did not cause much of a change, it still caused others to feel shocked. Under the situation where he did not use Do Qi and relied on his physical body to create such a scene, how could it not cause others to feel shocked? With such a powerful physical body, coupled with Xiao Yan's own Do Qi, Xiao Yan was completely confident in his heart that if he were to face an 8-star Do D again, he would definitely be able to kill the other party with one strike. The corner of Xiao Yan's mouth involuntarily revealed a cold smile when he thought of this. During this trip to the heaven-grade ancient tomb, he would completely end the grudge between him and the 4 large sects. After recovering, Xiao Yan did not hurry to get up. Instead, a thought passed through his mind and a powerful spiritual strength spread out. It covered the entire sky, appearing to be attracting something. A short moment later, threads of dark black energy agglomerated from the empty space between the sky and the earth. They swiftly gathered towards Xiao Yan. This dark black energy was the Great Way energy. Following the increase in his strength, Xiao Yan also wanted to see how much his Great Way energy had increased. A thought passed through his mind and the Great Way energy that was agglomerated in front of him swiftly split apart and agglomerated into 9/10. At this moment, the Great Way energy that was repeatedly attracted also slowly agglomerated. Finally, it successfully agglomerated into the 10th tent. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 926. Xiao Yan's gaze focused on the 10th tent in front of him. However, there was not much emotion in his eyes. Moreover, he did not feel very satisfied with the scene in front of him. The Great Way energy was the most mysterious energy in the world. Even Do Qi could not be compared with it. If it was not for the fact that Do Qi could not be absorbed, it was likely that the Great Way energy would have become the main force on this continent. However, even if this was the case, Xiao Yan still did not believe in his heart. As the most difficult energy to control in this world, could it only be used to escape or chase people? This was clearly not the case. Hence, Xiao Yan was even more curious about how he could better control and use the Great Way energy. Since it was his own energy, it must be under his control. Otherwise, if he could not even do this, there would be no point in keeping the Great Way energy. With this thought in his mind, Xiao Yan extended his hand and beckoned. The 10 tents automatically flew in front of him and merged together, turning into a black energy ball the size of a wash basin. It floated above Xiao Yan's palm. At this moment, Xiao Yan was only able to control the Great Tao strength. However, this was not his own will. He wanted to allow the Great Tao strength to unleash the strength it should possess in his hands. With a thought, An enormous amount of spiritual strength swiftly agglomerated in front of him, turning into an invisible large hand. Following the change in his mind, it grabbed at the energy ball in front of him. The dark black energy ball gradually changed shape under the wrapping of the spiritual strength. At times it became oval. At other times, it became long and thin. It was like a football and also like a long black stick. It was constantly changing. However, just as Xiao Yan thought that it would be so easy to agglomerate it, the ball of Great Way energy in front of him once again returned to its original state the moment his spiritual strength scattered. Xiao Yan couldn't help but be astounded when he saw this scene. Only now did he understand that the control of the energy of the Grand Tao wasn't as simple and easy as it seemed on the surface. However, it only took form on the surface, and it couldn't be fixed internally. Moreover, the energy within it couldn't be completely condensed. Even if such a loose energy of the Grand Tao could be condensed into the 10 taboos, it wouldn't be of much help to Xiao Yan. However, Xiao Yan also understood that the beginning of everything was the hardest. The profoundness of the Grand Tao was something that most people did not understand. Otherwise, there would not be so few people on the continent who could comprehend the Grand Tao. As he thought of this, Xiao Yan smiled and felt relieved. Then, he tried to control the power of the Great Way again. He believed that after countless attempts, there would be a way that would allow him to control the power of the Great Way perfectly. When that time came, the Void Great Way would definitely become his other trump card. Controlling the power of the Great Way in front of him, Xiao Yan poured his spiritual strength into it without caring about the consumption. He tried again and again, learning from his failures, and reinvigorating himself in the midst of disappointment. While he was constantly trying with such concentration, another month passed. At this moment, there was only 1 month left before the 1-year agreement with the people of the 4 great sections. As for Xiao Yan, he forgot himself and was immersed in the power of the Great Way in front of him. He repeatedly tried, and in a cycle of failure, he tried to find the exit of the lost path. On the other side, in the western region, the matter of the agreement between Xiao Yan and the 4 great sects had spread like a gust of wind throughout the western region. In the blink of an eye, almost everyone in the western region knew about it. Tianju Ancient Tomb. That was a great treasure land that everyone in the western region knew about. Unfortunately, it was sealed off from the outside world. The only way to open it was to gather all 3 of Tianju's famous Do skills and combine the power of the 3 Do skills to open it. Now that the 3 fighting skills had surfaced, it was time to open the Tianju Ancient Tomb. As the news spread, countless experts from various factions set off towards the desolate cliff. Although there was only 1 month left, these people who had long coveted the Tianju Ancient Tomb could no longer hold back their thoughts. They could not wait to enter the Tianju Ancient Tomb. Even though there was still 1 month left, it still made them feel excited. On Xiao Yan's side, after countless attempts, he finally grasped an opportunity. The power of the Great Way in front of him finally condensed. Even though it eventually returned to its original state, the form that was agglomerated from the Great Way lasted for nearly a minute this time around. Just this point alone was enough to cause Xiao Yan to be extremely excited. Since he had already taken the first step, he wouldn't be too far away from the moment of true success. After repeated attempts to condense the power of the Great Way for another 10 days, when Xiao Yan had exhausted more than half of the spiritual strength within his soul bead, the large cluster of pitch-black power of the Great Way in front of him actually completely condensed. It transformed into 10 black steel needles that were as long as a person's forearm and as thick as a pinky finger. The reason why they were called steel needles was because these 10 needles looked no different from ordinary metals on the surface. They looked as if they were made of steel. This was the result of the power of the Great Way being extremely condensed. Controlling the 10 steel needles, Xiao Yan lowered his body with curiosity in his heart. His gaze once again looked at the energy screen on the cliff. His face revealed an eager expression. He did not know what kind of result he would get if he used these 10 steel needles to deal with the light screen. Carrying the curiosity in his heart, Xiao Yan arrived in front of the light screen. He raised his hand and the 10 steel needles floated above his palm, faintly floating up and down. Go! Soon after, a thought passed through Xiao Yan's heart. He lifted his hand and gently waved it forward. 10 steel needles immediately shot forward. After emitting a sharp sound of rushing air, they pierced into the energy light curtain in an orderly manner. Chi! 10 steel needles pierced into the light screen at the same time, each one penetrating an inch or so into the light screen. Hiss! Seeing this scene, even as the master, Xiao Yan could not help but inhale a breath of cold air. The person who had set up this light screen was once an origin transformation expert. However, he did not expect that his 10 steel needles would be able to pierce into the light screen. It was hard to imagine just how frightening the power of these 10 steel needles was. If this kind of power landed on the body of a Dodi, it would immediately leave behind bloody holes. Soon after, while Xiao Yan's heart was feeling shocked because of this, numerous auras were swiftly hurrying over from a distance behind him. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 927. Following the swift approach of the many Qis in the distance, over 10 blurry light spots gradually became clear in Xiao Yan's sight. After which, they transformed into numerous clear human figures. Each of them took a different direction. There were also people who formed groups that flew in this direction. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yan could not help but frown slightly. He was curious about the purpose of these people coming here. As the human figures swiftly approached, those people had long since discovered Xiao Yan's figure. Immediately, quite a number of people threw hostile gazes at Xiao Yan. Of course, these people were constantly on guard against each other. The time of the opening of the ancient tomb of Heaven's End was getting closer and closer. Everyone present had become competitors. Everyone here had the possibility of snatching away the opportunity that originally belonged to them. As the saying goes, where there is competition, there will be fighting. In the process of fighting, it was unavoidable that there would be deaths and injuries. If possible, they would definitely not be stingy in attacking the people beside them. With each additional person, they would be a little more of a threat. Therefore, these people had long since unknowingly become enemies. Arriving in front of them, everyone's gazes were icy cold as they looked at Xiao Yan. Soon after, they looked at the energy light curtain on the cliff. Earlier, if they had not sensed the energy ripple here, they might not have been able to find this place so quickly. Numerous gazes looked at the energy light curtain on the cliff. Through it, one could vaguely see darkness. Immediately, a fiery expression involuntarily surged into the numerous gazes. The Do Qi in their bodies slowly circulated. There were people who wanted to go forward and try to break this energy light curtain. However, in the end they stopped. This ancient tomb had existed for nearly 1,000 years. The number of people who had tried to open it was uncountable. However, no one had ever succeeded in doing so. Even the attack of a 9-star Dodi would similarly be blocked by that thin energy light curtain. A light curtain that even a 9-star Dodi could not open. How could they do it? Xiao Yan smiled as he watched the few elite Dodi obediently withdraw. His gaze turned around and swept over those people behind him. Within a short moment, nearly 50 elite Dodi had gathered in this place. The strength of each of them was different. The weakest had reached the intermediate level of a 1-star Dodi while the strongest were 2 8-star Dodi. Such a strength could be considered a peak existence within the western region. Xiao Yan's dark black eyes swept over these people. His heart involuntarily became speechless. This western region was really filled with hidden dragons and crouching tigers. It was unexpected that nearly 50 elite Dodi, who were usually rarely seen, would actually appear together at this moment. Such a large group was definitely in existence that could do whatever they wanted in this western region. At the same time that Xiao Yan's gaze swept over these people, quite a number of people in the crowd also shifted their gazes to the former. Immediately, quite a number of gazes revealed surprise. Such a young elite Dodi was extremely rare even in the entire continent. Usually, such a strong person would definitely possess quite a large faction behind him. However, this black-robed young man in front of them appeared to be just one person. Thus, some of the people present involuntarily began to coldly laugh in their hearts. Various thoughts rose in their hearts. There were nearly 50 elite Dodi present. They would more or less have some dissatisfaction with each other. Once some small matters were to create friction, it would not be beneficial to them. Hence, it was undoubtedly the best if they could do something to deter the people present at this moment. As the saying goes, one must pick the soft persimmon to pinch. At this moment, Xiao Yan, who appeared to be the youngest among them, had naturally become their target. Being young meant that one's training time was short. At the same time, it also meant that one's strength was weak. Additionally, the latter was currently their opponent. If they could suppress him, they would be able to reduce one of their competitors. Secondly, they would be able to deter everyone present. This was no different from killing 2 birds with 1 stone. In their eyes, dealing with the latter was like an adult bullying a child. They did not feel any pressure. Of course, in view of the fact that the latter was also a Dodi, only some 7-star Dodi among those present would intervene. As for the 2 8-star Dodi, just their auras alone were sufficient to cause others to fear them. Naturally, there was nothing much for them to display. At the same time, Xiao Yan also sensed the unfriendly gazes that the few 7-star Dodi around him threw over. He thought for a moment in his heart and immediately understood. He involuntarily laughed coldly in his heart. There would be people willing to do such a thing no matter where they were. However, Xiao Yan was not an ordinary Dodi. Cuckoo, since all of you have delivered yourselves to my doorstep, I shall unceremoniously accept all of you. Xiao Yan coldly laughed in his heart. When he raised his eyes, he discovered that there was a 7-star Dodi middle-level expert walking toward him. There was even a mocking expression on his face. Xiao Yan smiled playfully when he saw this. Soon after, that expert also arrived in front of Xiao Yan. His gaze was dense as he looked at Xiao Yan and coldly laughed. Brat, you also wish to enter the Sky-End ancient tomb? The rough laughter contained a disdain. The person who came face to face with him was a middle-aged man with a strong appearance. His bronze-colored muscles appeared to be filled with an overbearing aura. Coupled with his rough voice, it caused the hearts of those who heard it to involuntarily tremble. On the other hand, Xiao Yan appeared skinny, forming a clear contrast with him. Can't I? Xiao Yan was indifferent as he smiled and asked. Ha ha ha, of course you can. However, if you want to enter, you must first ask if my fist agrees. With a cold cry, the strong man immediately maneuvered the enormous Do Chi within his body and agglomerated it in his palm. His enormous palm was suddenly clenched into a fist. His arm danced, carrying a hoo-hoo wind as it violently smashed toward Xiao Yan. Seeing the strong man attack with just one sentence, the surrounding crowd involuntarily emitted a hissing sound as they inhaled cold air. Soon after, that enormous fist that was wrapped in Do Chi instantly arrived in front of Xiao Yan and violently smashed toward the latter's face. The hoo-hoo wind whistled beside Xiao Yan's ear. The air in front of him swiftly became thin. Xiao Yan's breathing involuntarily became sluggish. However, Xiao Yan's expression was indifferent in the face of this. His unperturbed manner caused people to involuntarily be shocked when they saw it. It was also in the next instant that the enormous fist was about to smash onto Xiao Yan's face. Only then did Xiao Yan raise his hand. His movements were continuous and as fast as lightning. Under the disbelieving gaze of the middle-aged strong man in front of him, Xiao Yan opened his 5 fingers. Without using any Do Chi, he firmly locked the man's fist between his 5 fingers. Even the charging force and Do Chi was instantly broken. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 928. This scene that had suddenly appeared in the arena caused the expressions on the faces of all the elite Dodi present to instantly solidify. Numerous gazes were stunned as they stared at the black-robed human figure in the arena. The expression on their faces gradually turned into one of disbelief. This was really unbelievable. The attack of a 7-star Dodi was actually blocked by a black-robed young man in a situation where he had not even used his Do Chi. Moreover, from the looks of it, he was actually able to do it in such a relaxed manner. This was something that was impossible. At this moment, even the 2 8-star Dodi involuntarily threw surprised gazes at Xiao Yan. Even the heart of the 7-star Dodi, who was the person involved at this moment, was filled with shock. He was unable to control his entire body in the face of great fear. Soon after, Xiao Yan's wrist shook gently. His palm landed on the latter's fist. A powerful force immediately spluttered outwards. With just one strike, this strong man was forced back. Only after dozens of steps did his swaying body come to a halt. Do you still want to continue? Xiao Yan was unconcerned as he smiled and asked. No, no, no. Don't. That strong man's heart was suddenly startled when he heard Xiao Yan's words. He hurriedly waved his hand as a greeting and continued to pull back. However, no one mocked him at this moment. This was because just the strength that Xiao Yan had displayed earlier was something that no one present, other than the 2 8-star Dodi, dared to say that they could block. Immediately, everyone present involuntarily threw grave gazes at Xiao Yan. The faces of the 2 8-star Dodi were even more solemn. This black-robed, young man who appeared very young, likely possessed a strength that was not inferior to theirs. Fortunately, the person who had attacked was not them. Otherwise, it would be troublesome if they were to fight with him. Xiao Yan's gaze was cold as it swept over those elite Dodi around him. This time around, anyone who met his gaze involuntarily shrank back. Only the two 8-star Dodi did not avoid him as they walked out from the crowd. They cupped their hands to Xiao Yan and laughed. "The old me is Lu Hao. My name is Qi Rui." Then, the two old men looked at each other with cold gazes. Only then did they smile at Xiao Yan and say, "May I know your name?" Hearing this, Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes and looked at the two old men. After hesitating for a while, he smiled and said in a calm tone, "What are you talking about?" "I am Xiao Yan." "Xiao Yan. He's Xiao Yan. He's the Xiao Yan who made a 1-year agreement with the 4 great sects? Then doesn't that mean he holds the key to opening the ancient tomb of Heaven's End? I didn't expect him to be here so early. Moreover, looking at his strength, no wonder he dares to challenge the 4 great sects." The instant Xiao Yan said his name, a wave of surprised private discussions was immediately emitted from the crowd. At the same time, those gazes that were looking at Xiao Yan contained an additional surprise. Hearing the words that were emitted from the crowd, Xiao Yan raised his eyebrows slightly. Immediately, he calmed down. Although he was surprised that these people were actually aware of the agreement between him and the 4 great sects, things had already developed to this point. Even if he went to clarify things, there was no longer any meaning. The only thing that Xiao Yan was a little worried about was that he did not know just what kind of storm this matter would stir up. Originally, he thought that if it was only him and the people from the 4 great sects, his chances of finding the origin skill would definitely be much higher. However, from the looks of it, this matter was likely to be more troublesome than he had imagined. After randomly exchanging 2 sentences with the 2 8-star Dodi, Xiao Yan immediately moved his body and landed at the edge of the cliff. He sat down cross-legged and raised his hand. 10 steel needles were agglomerated in his palm. Controlling the 10 steel needles with his mind, Xiao Yan carefully observed them. The scene from earlier repeatedly replayed in his mind. The 10 steel needles shot out and entered in unison. They actually entered the energy light curtain at the same time. Such a powerful strength was something that Xiao Yan admitted that he would not be able to achieve even if he used the 7-layered sky-breaking ruler. Among all the Do skills that he possessed, it was likely that only the Angry Buddha Lotus Flame strength could surpass it. However, the Angry Buddha Lotus Flame greatly exhausted one's Do Qi. Once it was used, Xiao Yan would definitely descend into a weakened state. He must not use it unless it was a critical moment. Compared to the Angry Buddha Lotus Flame, the Angry Buddha Lotus Flame might be a little weaker. However, the Angry Buddha Lotus Flame only exhausted the Great Tao strength. Moreover, the steel needles were divided into 10. The number that was exhausted was completely up to Xiao Yan. Once the situation changed, he could completely transform them into a Great Tao barrier and use it to dodge. Hence, in comparison, the effect that these 10 steel needles brought to Xiao Yan was undoubtedly greater. With the strength of these steel needles, even a 9-star Dodi would be left with an injury that was difficult to recover from once they were hit. As long as he caught them off guard, Xiao Yan had a certain degree of confidence that he would be able to hold them back the next time they met. At the same time, in the Western Lin region, Green Hunchback Mountain. Damn it! Who was it that leaked the news? Now, the entire Western region knows that we are about to enter the Tianju ancient tomb. Humph, with the habits of those hungry wolves in the Western wastelands, I'm afraid that they are already waiting for us at the desolate cliff. Wu Jitian cursed with a ferocious expression in the large hall. The tea table beside his hand had been turned into dust by his palm. Even the chair that he was sitting on had already swayed. One could see just how furious his heart was at this moment. Cuckoo, sect leader Wu, there is no need for you to be angry. When we made the agreement with Xiao Yan 1 year ago, everyone in Shahi City clearly heard it. It is only reasonable that they would be aware of it. Now, the most important thing is the Tianju ancient tomb and those few factions. There is no need to worry about the others. Chen Zhan, who was wearing a golden robe, had an unconcerned face as he sat on the leader's seat. The other 2 people in the large hall also nodded slightly when they heard these words from his mouth. That's right. What Chief Chen Zhan said is true. The real trouble that we need to face is those few factions. That Xiao Yan is merely a bug that is detestable. Back then, we made the agreement that we would not touch him within the Tianju ancient tomb. However, that is merely within the Tianju ancient tomb. At the very most, we can just finish him off before we enter to avoid any more trouble. Jianming's strength had actually once again advanced during this 1 year. He had already stepped into the peak of the advanced 8-star Do D class. He was only a step away from the 9-star Do D class. Cuckoo! It is unexpected that Chief Jian has already stepped into the peak of the advanced 8-star Do D class after not seeing him for a year. It is likely that he will break through to the 9th star in a couple of years. Chen Zhen smiled as he looked at Jianming and spoke with a fake smile. Chief Chen Zhen really praises me too much. However, I am still far inferior when compared to you. After all, you and Chief Wu have both stepped into the 9-star Do D class. Oh, that's right. I have forgotten that there are 4 of us here. Chief Ye's strength should have also improved after not seeing me for a year, right? Jianming's tone changed as he mocked Yiloten. Cuckoo! The old me was lucky and broke through to the intermediate star Do D class not long ago. I can be considered to have fallen behind the 3 of you. I have embarrassed myself in front of the 3 of you. Ha 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 ha, this is a small matter. The way of training is all about progressing step by step. It is a good thing to be able to break through. Ha 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 ha. Chen Zhen, who was seated in the leader's seat, laughed out loud. The smile on his face contained some ridicule. That's right. It is rumored that quite a number of disciples within your sect have taken the initiative to withdraw from the sect not long ago. May I know if this is true? Chen Zhen's face carried a playful smile as he continued to look at the latter after laughing out loud. Wu Jiqian and Jian Ming threw their gazes toward the latter after these words were spoken. The corner of their mouths carried a slight smile. The cold smile in their eyes was not hidden at all. Ugh, cuckoo, since they are willing to withdraw, even if I am the chief, I cannot control their wills. I am merely following the will of the heavens. Yi Luotian waved his sleeves and smiled. His old face revealed an amiable smile. It was as though he was unconcerned. However, who knew where those disciples who had disappeared from the sect had gone to? Chapter 929. Time flew by. The remaining 1 month slowly passed while Xiao Yan's group waited in boredom. The human flow that had gathered at the desolate cliff had also become increasingly large. At this moment, there were over 100 elite Do D gathered at this place. There were also an uncountable number of Ban Di experts. These people had all come for the Tianju ancient tomb. Today was the final day that Xiao Yan and the 4 large sects had agreed upon. Today, the 4 sect leaders of the 4 large sects would lead their respective factions and arrive at this place. At this moment, the entrance of the ancient tomb was already filled with densely packed human heads. These people each took a side and guarded the factions behind them. They also maintained a certain distance from each other. At a glance, there were some people among these factions whom Xiao Yan had met in Jinyao City half a year ago. However, compared to back then, the eyes of these people today contained enmity when they looked at Xiao Yan, who was seated on the cliff. 2 human figures wearing black robes were seated cross-legged at a certain spot in the crowd. The 2 pairs of eyes under the black robes revealed an additional playful expression when they looked at Xiao Yan. The corner of the mouth under the black robes was lifted into a smile. The 2 of them quietly exchanged glances and smiled. Immediately, they calmed their hearts and sat cross-legged, no longer making any movements. The hot sun shone high in the sky. The searing high temperature grilled the entire land. The surface of the land was like a piece of metal that had been heated until it was red. Although most people were able to endure such terrible weather, a portion of the Ban Di experts were unable to endure it. Some of them even fainted because of the high temperature. Those who were still bitterly enduring could only hope that the people from the 4 large sects would quickly arrive. While everyone present was bitterly waiting, another person finally hurried over from the distant horizon. Immediately, quite a number of people present threw their gazes that were filled with anticipation. However, as the distance became increasingly closer, they saw that the person leading the group was actually a young man in white robes. Despite being extremely far away, Xiao Yan was still able to recognize the young man at a glance with his eyesight. Immediately, the expression on his face became gloomy. This person was none other than Qin Yun, who had nearly caused his death in Jinyao City half a year ago. At this moment, other than Yan He and the other 2 who had been following beside him, there were 2 additional people in black robes. Moreover, under Xiao Yan's spiritual perception, the cultivations of these 2 people were actually 9-star Do Di. These 2 people were the ones who had joined forces with Yan He and the other 2 to swallow everyone in Jinyao City half a year ago. Unfortunately, no one knew the truth regarding the matter that had happened half a year ago until now. All they knew was that Jinyao City had suddenly disappeared. All that was left was an enormous pit. Of course, Xiao Yan, who was on the cliff, was unaware of all of this. Following the arrival of Qin Yun's group, the people in front consciously opened up a path for them. The 6 of them descended and landed in front of everyone. Qin Yun, who was leading the group, and the black-robed person beside him immediately turned their gazes to Xiao Yan on the cliff. The expression in their eyes instantly turned cold. Xiao Yan, it is really as if one can wear out iron shoes in a fruitless search, only to find it without any effort. You have really made it difficult for me to find you. Under the black robe, the mouth of the human figure emitted a low strange laughter, causing Qin Yun to feel extremely surprised in his heart. Half a year ago, when this fellow heard Xiao Yan's name, his entire body had revealed an extremely excited expression. However, the only thing that caused him to feel fortunate was that this fellow beside him did not seem to have a good impression of Xiao Yan. Instead, it was a kind of cold killing intent that was like facing an enemy. It was unexpected that this fellow would actually be unable to suppress the excitement in his heart after they had just met today. However, in the end, this black-robed person still suppressed the emotions in his heart and did not make any big movements. This also caused Qin Yun by the side to relax and quietly sigh in relief. After having seen the might of Xiao Yan's angry Buddha lotus flame, he was especially afraid of the latter. Up until now, the huge energy storm that occurred in Jinyao City half a year ago was still fresh in his memory. Once he recalled it, his heart could not help but tremble. And just as the black-robed person looked at Xiao Yan also noticed the latter. The moment their eyes met, Xiao Yan clearly felt a trace of familiar yet strange feeling. Unfortunately, both of them were extremely cautious of each other. Therefore, even Xiao Yan could not find out the source of that feeling. However, his intuition in his heart told him that this black-robed person was very dangerous. With a dignified heart, Xiao Yan turned his gaze back. At this moment, in the distance behind the crowd, from the eastern horizon, several figures were faintly flying over. In the blink of an eye, those figures had already appeared in the sight of everyone present. Immediately, the eyes of everyone present lit up slightly, and a fiery feeling immediately surged from the bottom of their hearts. The people who came were divided into 4 groups, and each group had more than 10 people. In particular, the group that was closer to the back had nearly 20 people. However, at this moment, the people present were most concerned about the leaders of these 4 groups. Those 4 people were the sect leaders of the 4 great sects of Shilin region. From left to right, they were Chen Zhan of the God-refining sect, Wu Jitian of the Battle Martial sect, Jian Ming of the Sky Sword sect, and Yiluo Tian of the Withered Leaf sect. Among these 4 groups, the group with the most people belonged to the Withered Leaf sect that Yiluo Tian belonged to. After these 4 groups arrived, they directly rushed past everyone below and landed at the front of the group. There was a bottomless abyss in between them. On the opposite side was the entrance to the Tianju ancient tomb, which was covered by a light curtain. Xiao Yan was seated cross-legged on the cliff directly above the entrance. Hey, they are merely 4 sects formed by 2 initial 9-star Do D and 2 8-star Do D. Yet, they actually dare to act so arrogantly. Do they really think that the Western Wastelands region can be compared with the Shilin region? The key to open the ancient tomb is in their hands. They act with reason and evidence. Naturally, they would be arrogant and domineering. If those 2 Do techniques were in your hands, you might even be more overboard than them. After the disdainful laughter was emitted, a rebuttal was immediately emitted. At this moment, the people from the 4 great sects at the front of the group did not have the time to bother about it. 4 pairs of eyes were lifted at the same time. Their eyes had different expressions as they looked at Xiao Yan on the cliff. At this moment, the latter had also withdrawn his eyes and exchanged glances with the 4 of them. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 930. The scorching sun shone down on the sandy ground. The scorching heat caused one to feel a scorching pain even through one's shoes. It was as if one was standing on red-hot coal. However, the members of the 4 great sects did not seem to care. Their gazes followed the sect leader's line of sight. At the top of the cliff, a black-robed youth was seated there. A pair of pitch-black eyes were also staring at them. The scene was silent. The whistling wind between heaven and earth seemed to have suddenly quieted down. The atmosphere gradually became strange and solemn. Suddenly, the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth revealed a smile as he sat cross-legged on the cliff. Sect leaders, it has been a year since we last met. How have you been? Instantly, the solemn atmosphere in the air was instantly broken. As Xiao Yan spoke, his gaze swept across the four of them. When it swept past Xiao Yan, his gaze paused. At the same time, the latter's gaze toward Xiao Yan had an additional trace of viciousness. Xiao Yan, I didn't expect you to be even more anxious than us. You have actually already removed the first seal of the ancient tomb. Ignoring Xiao Yan's gaze, Chen Zhen looked at the light screen in front of him. The corners of his mouth curled into a cold smile. Oh! When these words were spoken, Wu Jiqian, who had not noticed this, also turned his gaze and carefully looked at the light screen. Soon after, a bright light flashed across his eyes. Indeed, the first seal of the entrance had been removed. This also meant that even without Xiao Yan, they could still enter the ancient tomb. It seems that they are not on good terms with each other. When he heard the conversation between the two parties, Qin Yun coldly laughed. His tone actually carried a hint of wanting to watch the show. In order to make it easier to enter the ancient tomb, I removed the first seal. Now the remaining two seals will all depend on sect leader Chen Zhan and sect leader Wu. Xiao Yan smiled slightly as he stood on the cliff. He was naturally able to guess the little scheme in the hearts of these people. It was just that he was unconcerned. With the current cultivation of the four people in front of him, it was already very difficult for them to hurt Xiao Yan. Moreover, even with the addition of Qin Yun's group, they could at most make him feel pressured. In this desolate cliff, if he wanted to leave, no one could stop him. We will naturally remove the seal. However, before that, we will settle this with you. With a cold laugh, Wu Jiqian took a step forward. Immediately, a powerful aura swept forward like a storm, pressing toward Xiao Yan. Buzz. However, with a thought, a powerful soul force immediately gushed out when the aura arrived in front of Xiao Yan. Rank 4 soul power. This guy has actually become a rank 4 alchemist. Sensing the powerful spiritual strength that surged out of Xiao Yan's body, the expressions of the people from the four large sects immediately changed. Even Chen Zhan, who was a rank 4 formation master, had an extremely ugly expression on his face at this moment. Behind them, at this moment, Qin Yun's fair face could not help but reveal a cold killing intent. Damn it! It must be the hibiscus flower. The hibiscus flower is actually in his hands. The moment he felt the surging soul force in Xiao Yan's body, Qin Yun immediately thought of the scene that had happened in Jinyao City half a year ago. He happily and contentedly put the so-called Fusong flower into his storage ring. It wasn't until he returned to the valley that he suddenly realized that the Fusong flower that he treated as a treasure was actually a nightmare flower that was completely useless to him. This matter had once caused Qin Yun to be greatly infuriated, and the hatred and killing intent in his heart surged wildly. Because of this, he'd even searched the entire western wastelands in order to find the mysterious person that had handed the nightmare flower to him that day. Unfortunately, he didn't know that that fellow had already died along with everyone in the city when they swallowed the entire golden brilliant city. Damn it! Qin Yun cursed angrily on the ground. This time around, it was him who was stopped by the black-robed person. I advise you not to anger him so early. Otherwise, you will not be able to bear the consequences if he escapes. Clearly, the black-robed person's words were quite effective on Qin Yun. The moment these words sounded, the latter appeared to have been splashed with cold water. He unwillingly swung his sleeves, snorted coldly and withdrew. So what if your spiritual strength has increased? In front of powerful Do Qi, just your spiritual strength alone is unable to do anything. Jian Ming let out a cold snort from the four of them. He also took a step forward. The powerful aura of an advanced 8-star Do Di pressured Xiao Yan as it charged toward him. Unfortunately, Xiao Yan was still unconcerned about it. Soon after, Chen Zhan by his side also unleashed a powerful aura. Only then did he force Xiao Yan, who was on the cliff, to take a step back. We have yet to enter the ancient tomb, but all of you are already unable to wait to kill me. Xiao Yan's expression was dense. The Do Qi within his body had already circulated to the Qi paths in his entire body. Xiao Yan, we know that once we enter the ancient tomb, we will be restrained by the lightning penalty oath. At that time, it will be even more difficult to deal with you. However, as long as we can finish you off before entering the ancient tomb, we will not have any misgivings. Jian Ming laughed coldly. At the same time, the tip of his foot pressed gently on the ground. His body immediately shot into the sky and was level with Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan, you have caused the foundation of the 4 great clans under my command to be completely destroyed. Hundreds of years of family business have been destroyed by your hands. The old me really regrets not being able to kill you back then. However, since the heavens have given me this opportunity today, the old me will personally settle this with you. I originally thought that it was only the 4 great clans that were incompetent. It is unexpected that you, the sect leader, are also an incompetent fool. Xiao Yan involuntarily laughed coldly when he heard Jian Ming's words. Although the members of the 4 great clans had died at his hands, it was caused by Yi Luotian. At the bottom of it all, this matter was inextricably linked to Yi Luotian. However, even until now, the 4 great sects were still kept in the dark. They were really extremely foolish. Humph, what a sharp tongue. Die for the old me. Jian Ming's body suddenly shook with a furious cry. The dou qi within his body immediately spluttered out and agglomerated into a somewhat illusionary large sword around him. A sharp sword aura shot to the sky, causing the empty space around him to tremble repeatedly, revealing tiny spatial crack lines. Today, I will let you have a taste of the strongest sword of my 7-sword skill, Soaring Sword. Ha! Soon after, Jian Ming's body transformed into a sword accompanied by an earth-shaking cry. It carried an incomparably sharp overbearing aura as it cut through the empty space and charged explosively toward Xiao Yan. From the looks of this aura, it seemed that he intended to determine the victor with a single sword. Indeed, with his advanced 8-star Dou D strength, he did indeed possess the capital to face a 5-star Dou D. Unfortunately, the current Xiao Yan was no longer the Xiao Yan from a year ago. His fighting strength was incomparable to the past. Humph. Soaring? I will allow you to soar to the sky with a single sword. Xiao Yan was too lazy to say any unnecessary words and delay the battle in the face of this situation. His body shook and the Dragon Phoenix bloodline within his body was instantly activated. Even the Strength Elephant skill and the Dragon Phoenix ancient armor were unleashed. At the same time, the dou qi within his body wildly agglomerated on his right fist. A powerful strength agglomerated on his right fist as he violently threw a punch forward without any hesitation. With a punch, the advanced 8-star Dou D, Jian Ming, died. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 931. Jian Ming's body was like a pile of minced meat as he was sent flying far away in the empty space. After which, the stunned crowd heard a muffled sound of a heavy object falling to the ground. At this moment, their hearts involuntarily trembled. It was very difficult to imagine that the fellow who had been sent flying in front of their eyes was an advanced 8-star Dou D. The atmosphere in the battleground instantly became tense. A deep fear lingered in the hearts of everyone present. A couple of people in the crowd threw shocked gazes toward Xiao Yan. At the same time, Chen Zhen's group, Qin Yun's group, and the black-robed person standing by the side, who were the closest, felt shocked at the powerful strength that the human figure in the sky had displayed. Xiao Yan's group was stunned. Is he dead? This question lingered in everyone's hearts. Ever since the muffled sound was emitted from behind, there seemed to be no more activity. Moreover, they could no longer sense the slightest trace of life from Jian Ming. It seemed that the latter had really died after Xiao Yan's punch. No one turned around to take a look. It was not that they were not curious, but that they did not dare to do so. Chen Zhen and the others at the front did not need to think too much. They had clearly seen that Jian Ming's body had been forcefully shattered by Xiao Yan's punch. That kind of powerful strength was something that even they did not dare to underestimate. Even Wu Jitian, who was known for his physical body, did not dare to do so. This brat. What has he done during this 1 year? How could his strength have increased by so much? Even though Wu Jitian was unwilling to believe it, the truth was already placed in front of him. He could not afford to doubt it. Xiao Yan's body stood steadily in the sky. His fist, which had been thrown forward, slowly opened. He immediately beckoned with his hand and a suction force immediately surged from his palm. Soon after, a storage ring flew over from the distant sky. It was Jian Ming's storage ring. Since he had already killed Jian Ming, Xiao Yan would naturally not let go of the spoils of war. After all, this was the storage ring of an 8-star Dou D. The collection within it was extremely valuable. Xiao Yan did not wish to easily miss out on such a good resource. Xiao Yan kept the storage ring. Only then did he withdraw his gaze. He looked at Chen Zhan and the others below. His cold face was instantly covered with a warm smile as he said, "The three of you, do you still plan to kill me now?" The three of them frowned when they heard this. Their old faces involuntarily turned green. They were the ones who had said that they wanted to kill Xiao Yan. Now that things had developed into such a situation, they felt quite helpless in their hearts. Once they made a move, it was very likely that they would end up like Jian Ming. However, if they did not make a move, they would lose all their face. Of us. It was also at this moment that an elder from the Celestial Sword sect stepped forward. He roared at Wu Jitian and the others furiously and unwillingly. He hoped that the three of them would consider the alliance and take revenge for Jian Ming. Pa! The old man's incessant chatter was met with a furious slap from Wu Jitian. With the strength of a 9-star Do Di, the old man's body was violently sent flying under Wu Jitian's powerful physical strength, even though it was merely a slap against a 7-star Do Di. Bastard! Since when did it become your turn to dictate what I do? You are right. Our 4 sects are indeed in an alliance. However, this is only based on the relationship between the sect leaders. Now that your Sky Sword sect leader is dead, you still want me to form an alliance with you? Do you think you are worthy? Everyone from the Sky Sword Gate immediately became quiet after this explosive cry. The prestige of a 9-star Do Di was not something that they could easily come into contact with. At this moment, the 7-star Do Di who was sent flying by Wu Jitian's slap unwillingly shrank back. Humph! Wu Jitian coldly glanced at everyone from the Sky Sword sect before withdrawing his gaze. Chen Zhan and Yi Luotian by the side watched with cold eyes. They had no intention of stepping in. Soon after, the three of them turned their gazes towards Xiao Yan. We can temporarily put aside the grudge between us. However, we will definitely not let this matter rest. Wu Jitian's expression was dense. Although he wished that he could kill Xiao Yan, he did not dare to recklessly seek Jian Ming's future. Haha, relax. Even if you will let this matter rest, I will not let you off. Xiao Yan smiled slightly when he heard this. His relaxed manner caused the hearts of the 3 people in front of him to sink. For some unknown reason, even with their strength, they felt powerless when facing Xiao Yan once again. The latter's strength had already appeared beyond their control. This caused them to feel regret in their hearts. They regretted not being able to kill Xiao Yan back then. If that was the case, it was likely that everything today would not have happened. Unfortunately, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Times were different. They were destined to no longer have the opportunity to kill Xiao Yan. 2 sect leaders, let's open the Tianju ancient tomb first. We can't just continue to wait here. That's right, that's right. Quickly open the ancient tomb. Open the ancient tomb. Seeing that there was no longer any activity between Xiao Yan and the remaining 3 great sects, everyone present immediately turned their attention back to the Tianju ancient tomb. Chen Zhan and Wu Jitian exchanged glances with each other when they heard the urging voice that caused one to feel irritated being transmitted from behind. They hesitated for a moment before nodding heavily. After which, the 2 of them took a step forward and walked in front of the light curtain. Each of them unleashed the surging Do Qi within their bodies. Soon after, an enormous energy palm and energy finger swiftly agglomerated above the 2 of them. Within a short couple of breaths, the palm and finger flew forward and smashed into the energy barrier in front of them. Hum hum hum. Immediately, a buzzing sound was emitted from the light curtain. Soon after, everyone could clearly see the light on the originally solid energy light curtain gradually dim. It flickered faintly and the light curtain became increasingly thin until it became transparent. It was a long while later before the energy light curtain completely disappeared. The entrance of the ancient tomb behind it also completely appeared in front of everyone present. At this moment, everyone present stared at the entrance of the ancient tomb in front of them with fiery hot eyes. Their bodies involuntarily trembled slightly. The blood within everyone's body began to boil at this moment. The moment that they had been waiting for a long time had finally arrived. The Tianju ancient tomb was officially opened. Chapter 932. Rumble. At the same time when the entrance to the ancient tomb was opened, numerous huge blue thunderbolts suddenly surged out from the surrounding walls within the deep tunnel. They were like numerous huge snakes, and in the blink of an eye, they filled the entire entrance. This is... Instantly, the crowd that was extremely excited a moment ago quickly quietened down. Many solemn gazes stared at the terrifying thunderbolts in the tunnel. They could feel an extremely frightening power from them. It was hard to imagine how serious the injuries would be if they were hit by them. Esteemed Tianju is indeed worthy of being the #1 person in the Western region. The work of nearly 1,000 years ago is still so powerful even now. It's really impressive. Looks like we can only take this lightning array head-on. It's impossible to dodge it. The thunderbolts in the tunnel seemed to have sealed off the entire tunnel. There was no way for them to escape. It was simply a fantasy. Humph. Sect leader Chen Zhan is having it easy. With your strength as a rank 4 array master, it shouldn't be too difficult for you to resist the thunderbolts with your array. Wu Jitian turned his gaze and looked at Chen Zhan with a smile. Haha, sect leader Wu, why do you have to belittle yourself? Your physical body is also at the peak level. I'm afraid that it hasn't improved for many years. If you can go through the special refinement of these thunderbolts, it might be able to increase your strength. Speaking of which, these thunderbolts might be troublesome to us, but to you, it's a great training resource. Humph, I'll take your blessings. Wu Jitian smiled in a non-committal manner. After which, numerous figures flew out from behind him and charged into the thunderbolts. Crackle. Instantly, these people seemed to have been thrown into a pot of boiling oil. Thunderbolts were constantly being stirred up and violently collided with their bodies. Miserable shrieks were unceasing. The Do-D experts were still fine, but the majority of the half-emperors that charged in were instantly turned into ashes by the thunderbolts, except for some of the stronger ones. Hiss! Following the appearance of this shocking scene, the remaining crowd involuntarily sucked in a breath of cold air. The crowd quickly became chaotic as various emotions continuously rose in their hearts. Their greedy eyes stared unwillingly at the entrance of the old tomb in front of them. It was a long time before someone finally withdrew. In the face of life and death, everything no longer seemed so worth it. Humph, a mere lightning bolt wants to stop this young master? Let's go! At the front of the crowd, Qin Yun's eyes were cold as he looked at the tunnel that was filled with thunderbolts. He snorted coldly and waved his hand. After which, he led the few people behind him and leaped into the tunnel. Soon after, when everyone gradually calmed down, the major forces began to take action one after another. Although the lightning in the passageway was dangerous, it did not pose a fatal threat to them. Not long after, it was the turn of the 3 great sections. The first to enter the passageway was naturally Wu Jitian, who was extremely confident. Under his lead, the group of elite Do-D from the Battle Martial sect stepped into the tunnel together. In the face of the lightning, other than neutralizing most of its strength, the remaining portion was automatically placed into their bodies, allowing the lightning to pass through their bodies. Under the waves of pain, the physical strength of this group of people was indeed slowly increasing. Under the refinement of the threads of lightning, even the physical strength of Wu Jitian's Do-D had increased once again. Humph. Just based on this, the old me has not lost out on this trip to the old tomb. Ha. Although his body was continuously being struck by the lightning, Wu Jitian's heart was filled with joy. After which, it was Chen Zhan's turn. Just like what Wu Jitian had said, with the latter's strength as a rank 4 formation master, it was not difficult for him to deal with the lightning. However, in order to protect the people from the sect behind him, he had to slow down his speed of passing through the tunnel. Xiao Yan only entered the tunnel after a long time. Faced with the incoming lightning, Xiao Yan's method was simple and crude. With a flick of his finger, the Northern King's body immediately appeared in front of him. Faced with the lightning, the strange suction force within the Northern King's body suddenly surged. No matter how large the lightning was, it was unceremoniously swallowed into the Northern King's body and forcefully refined by the Northern King. The frightening lightning, which was something that others could not avoid, had nowhere to hide in Xiao Yan's body. Under the strange suction force of the Northern King, the seemingly powerful lightning was not left behind at all wherever it passed. The strength of the Northern King swiftly soared under this wild swallowing. In the blink of an eye, it had already reached the level of a 7-star Do-D. Xiao Yan's advancing speed did not decrease as he wildly swallowed without stopping. Instead, he became faster and faster. Gradually, even the thunderbolts that repeatedly shot out from the wall were unable to keep up with the Northern King's swallowing speed. From this, one could imagine just how swift the Northern King swallowed the thunderbolts. Of course, blindly swallowing did not mean that the Northern King had completely absorbed the strength of the lightning. This process of refining and absorbing would likely require a very long time. However, the Northern King's strength was still rising. While Xiao Yan was swiftly flying, a bolt of lightning coincidentally charged into Xiao Yan's body. Xiao Yan's heart was suddenly startled by this powerful energy that had suddenly charged into his body. By the time he recovered, the lightning had already spread throughout Xiao Yan's body. It had even reached every cell in his body. An intense pain assaulted him. Xiao Yan was unable to endure this intense pain. The expression on his face instantly became distorted. However, the frightening lightning quickly came under Xiao Yan's control under the wild refinement of the bone-chilling flame. The wild and violent energy within the frightening lightning was gradually removed under the refinement of Xiao Yan's heavenly flame. Of course, the lightning that had already merged with Xiao Yan's muscles and bones could not be easily removed. Hence, Xiao Yan could only helplessly endure the numbness that was emitted from deep within his body. He waited for the remaining lightning energy to completely merge with his muscles and bones. At the same time, the lightning was also gradually refined until it was pure under the refinement of the bone-chilling flame. It turned into an enormous energy that poured into Xiao Yan's vortex. With the injection of such an enormous energy, Xiao Yan clearly discovered that his strength, which had just broken through, had immediately stabilized. Finally, after Xiao Yan had completely absorbed this energy, his strength had risen by another level. He had reached the middle stage of the 6-star Do D class. Within a short few months, his cultivation had risen from the advanced stage of the 5-star Do D class to the middle stage of the 6-star Do D class. This speed was likely something that even some of the seed-level geniuses within the supersex might not be able to achieve. When Xiao Yan discovered that his aura had risen at the same time, the strength of the Northern King in front of him had risen at an even more frightening rate. At this moment, the strength of the Northern King had already risen to the advanced stage of the 8-star Do D class. Such strength was likely not inferior to even the ancestors of some factions. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 933. The lightning tunnel was very long. Adding the frightening thunderbolts within it, it caused most of the people to involuntarily cry out that they were about to collapse. However, with Xiao Yan's speed, he merely used around an hour to cover this distance. Very quickly, the thunderbolts in front of him completely disappeared. A large hall appeared in front of Xiao Yan. After exiting the lightning tunnel, Xiao Yan's body gradually descended. Soon after, his feet stepped on the ground. In front of the large hall was a large open ground. At this moment, quite a number of factions had already gathered in the open ground. The 3 large sects and Qin Yun's group were also present. Xiao Yan's appearance immediately attracted the attention of everyone in the open ground. After what had happened earlier, Xiao Yan's name was currently engraved in their hearts. Quite a number of people's faces revealed an especially fearful expression when they saw him. Seeing that Xiao Yan had caught up so quickly, the expression in Chen Zhen's eyes involuntarily hardened. Looking at this refreshed manner of Xiao Yan, it seemed that the latter had not been affected by the lightning tunnel. On the other hand, although nothing unexpected had happened to Chen Zhen's group, the Do Qi in their bodies had been greatly exhausted. This also caused their auras to fluctuate a little. They were not as steady and long as Xiao Yan. On the other side, Qin Yun's group also threw their unfriendly gazes toward Xiao Yan. Their gazes paused on the latter for a moment before turning their heads to look at the large hall in front of them. Xiao Yan ignored these gazes. His gaze landed on the large hall at the front of the crowd the moment he stepped into the open ground. The large hall was extremely majestic. It reached all the way to the dome and connected to the stone walls. It was impossible to fly through it. Below, an extremely thick and heavy stone door blocked the path of everyone present. On both sides of the stone door, there was an enormous stone pillar. At this moment, there were actually 2 enormous lightning dragons coiled around it. These 2 lightning dragons were different from the thunderbolts in the tunnel earlier. Their bodies were even stronger and larger. Waves of lightning lingered over their blue bodies. The strength that was emitted from them caused people to raise their eyebrows. The arrival of Xiao Yan's group had already woken these 2 lightning dragons, which had been in a long slumber for nearly 1,000 years, from their long slumber. Xiao Yan's face involuntarily revealed a strange expression as he looked at the 2 lightning dragons. He pondered in his heart. He did not know if his Northern King could swallow and absorb these 2 lightning dragons. If that was the case, the Northern King's strength would once again rise to a new level. At that time, he might have some confidence once he encountered that mysterious black-robed person in Qin Yun's group. The awakening of the 2 lightning dragons caused quite a number of people present to reveal solemn expressions. The strength of these two beasts was likely not inferior to Chen Zhen's group. They were powerful thunderbolts that were comparable to a 9-star Do-D. Even within the entire Western region, there were very few people who could contend with them. Yet, they were actually only used to guard the entrance of this heaven-end ancient tomb. One could imagine just how dangerous the deeper regions of this ancient tomb were. Of course, although everyone clearly understood this point in their hearts, they also understood that danger and opportunity often coexisted. As long as they were able to survive these dangers, their rewards would definitely be extremely gratifying. Looks like the thunderbolts outside were merely a small test. This place is the true entrance to the ancient tomb. At the front of the crowd, the ancestors of a few large factions raised their turbid eyes and looked at the two lightning dragons in front of them. Their gazes swept over this majestic large hole and involuntarily sighed. Ha! There is actually a formation restriction on this stone door. From the looks of it, this Tianju did not only rely on Do-Chi back then. From the looks of it, his attainment in the way of formations is likely quite high. Chen Zhen's gaze swept over the stone door in front of him. After sensing the familiar strength that it contained, he quickly discovered this point. Oh, formation ha! Hee, Chen Zhen, you have the greatest understanding of formations among us. You can be said to be extremely knowledgeable. Why don't you give it a try and see if you can open this formation? Wu Jitian chuckled and turned his attention to Chen Zhen. In his heart, he clearly knew that the two lightning dragons in front of him were not inferior to him. In fact, they were even stronger than him and Chen Zhen. If they were to forcefully attack, it would only bring them endless trouble. Before they truly entered the ancient tomb, he did not want to waste his strength in vain. Humph, Wu Jitian, your words might sound nice, but aren't you thinking too highly of me? I'm only a Tier 4 array master, but the seal on this stone door is at least a Tier 5 one. I can't break it at all. If I try to break it by force, I'm afraid I'll only destroy the seal. If I trigger some unknown force and cause the tomb to collapse, we'll all die here. Although his words were plain and ordinary, when it reached the ears of everyone present, their hearts trembled slightly. Even the black-robed man beside Qin Yun was no exception. Then what should we do? Don't tell me that we are just going to waste our time here? I can't wait that long. Wu Jitian curled his lips and growled impatiently. Chen Zhen helplessly shook his head. He lifted his gaze and looked at the two lightning dragons in front of him. He helplessly said, "From the looks of this formation, it should be connected to these two lightning dragons. In other words, these two lightning dragons are very likely to be the key to unlocking the formation. In other words, the only way to open this stone door is to defeat these two lightning dragons." When Chen Zhen said these words, the muscles on Wu Jitian's face twitched. At the same time, the surrounding crowd could not help but whisper. Xiao Yan, who was standing behind, quietly stood there. If there was no need, he did not want to attempt this now. Rather than rushing to act, it was better to observe the situation first. If there was someone who could resolve it, it would save him some effort. After a short period of time, an old man wearing a gray robe slowly walked out from the crowd. He walked to the front of the crowd. As the old man stepped out, a powerful aura spread out from his body. A quasi-9-star Do-D. This strength was even a little inferior when compared to Chen Zhen and Wu Jitian. However, he could be considered one of the few experts present. Xiao Yan had never seen this old man before. However, he did not take him to heart. The western region was vast and there were many hidden dragons and crouching tigers. The strength of some of the low-key factions was not as simple as it appeared on the surface. This point could be seen from the so-called 4 large sects of the western region. The old man slowly walked out under the crowd's gaze. A vast aura was released and a powerful Do-Chi lingered around his body like a long snake. Very soon, the old man's figure arrived between the two stone pillars. At the same time, the two pairs of huge eyes of the two awakened lightning dragons stared intently at the old man. Chi! Suddenly, the two lightning dragons moved together just as the gray-robed old man took a step forward. They twisted their bodies and two sharp claws attacked the old man from the left and right. A powerful strength easily tore the empty space apart. In the blink of an eye, they had already descended on the two sides of the old man. Humph, back off. The old man did not panic when he saw this. His expression was calm as he twisted his body. At the same time, powerful Do-Chi spluttered out from his body. He raised both of his arms and pushed them forward. With the support of his powerful Do Chi, he easily blocked the attacks of the two lightning dragons. Soon after, the old man's arms suddenly shook. A powerful force suddenly erupted and forcefully pushed back the claws of the two lightning dragons. Humph, you are merely two beasts formed from a formation. You actually wish to stop the old me. The old man immediately laughed out loud after forcing back the two lightning dragons with a single palm. Do Chi surged and his body moved. He flew into the air and powerful Do Chi continued to shoot out, suppressing the two lightning dragons for a short period of time. The people below were non-committal as they watched what appeared to be a one-sided battle. This old man had already used his Do Chi at the beginning in order to suppress the two lightning dragons. On the other hand, the two lightning dragons had not truly used their strength other than relying on their brute force. The two lightning dragons appeared to be unable to retaliate under the attack of the old man. However, it was likely that the old man would not be able to resist if the lightning dragons were to truly attack. He is about to lose. Chen Zhen watched the intense battle in the arena. His mouth faintly sighed. Soon after, a glaring blue-colored lightning glow flashed on the surface of the two lightning dragons. Frightening thunderbolts surged in all directions and instantly shattered the attack of the gray-robed old man. Soon after, the remaining strength heavily smashed into the old man's body, sending him flying. Soon after, Chen Zhen and Wu Jitian exchanged glances in front of the shocked eyes of everyone present. They immediately nodded heavily. Their toes pressed on the ground as their eyes turned back. Their bodies immediately rushed forward. Soon after, they began to fight with the two lightning dragons. Rumble. Intense Do Chi explosions reverberated over the arena. Thunderbolts shot out and Do Chi flew wildly. The battle in the arena was extremely intense. It caused everyone below to be dazzled as they watched. Their mouths involuntarily clicked their tongues in amazement. The battle in the arena continued for a long time. The two lightning dragons gradually fell into a disadvantageous position in front of everyone's eyes. It seemed that they were about to be defeated. However, it was at this moment that a bright green glow suddenly flashed on the two stone pillars that the lightning dragons were occupying. Soon after, the two lightning dragons actually coiled around each other in front of Chen Zhen and Wu Jitian's grave eyes. Finally, they merged into a huge green dragon. The battle continued. However, this time around, Chen Zhen and Wu Jitian had fallen into a disadvantageous position. Soon after, they were also forced back by this huge green dragon. Chen Zhen and Wu Jitian were thus declared defeated. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 934. Damn it, I didn't expect this bastard to actually merge. Humph, this bastard. You can't win, so you rely on merging. Unorthodox methods. If not for this, I would have smashed you into pieces. On the ground, Chen Zhen and Wu Jitian coldly looked at the huge dragon that had already merged. The latter's face was filled with unwillingness. If the two huge dragons had not taken the opportunity to merge, he would have had the chance to finish it off. After all, it was only a formation. Its battle experience was far from being comparable to a real living person. Although it was powerful, Chen Zhen and Wu Jitian had a certain chance of winning if they were to really fight. However, the appearance of this green dragon had turned the situation around in an instant. The merging of the two lightning dragons had caused the green dragon's strength to become even more powerful. At this moment, the green dragon's strength was comparable to a middle-stage 9-star Do D. It was not that no one present had such strength. However, they were all waiting for one another. They were waiting because there would be someone who could not help but make a move. Since no one is making a move, let me give it a try. Xiao Yan smiled at the back of the crowd. His toes gently pressed on the ground. Immediately, his body flew over everyone's heads like a huge bird. His footsteps landed steadily at the front of the crowd. He lifted his gaze and looked at the green lightning dragon in front of him. Roar! Immediately, a low and deep beast roar was emitted from the lightning dragon's mouth. It caused circles of invisible spatial ripples in the empty space. Behind him, everyone could not help but be startled when they saw Xiao Yan suddenly step forward. This was especially so for those who had a conflict with Xiao Yan. They could not help but frown. Based on their understanding of the former, this fellow was very smart. How could he take the initiative to attack? However, they could not figure out why he would do so from the looks of it. At the front, the corner of Xiao Yan's mouth curled into a smile. His body moved and he soared into the sky, standing in front of the huge dragon. Scanning the lightning dragon in front of him, Xiao Yan's eyes could not help but be filled with anticipation. Immediately after, the lightning dragon in front of him did not hesitate. Its huge body suddenly twisted, and its huge dragon tail swept towards Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan's eyes narrowed upon seeing this. His body moved and the sky extinction step was unleashed. At the same time, he flicked his finger and the Northern King's body appeared in front of him. Its body charged toward the enormous dragon tail without dodging. Boom! With a muffled bang, the Northern King actually hugged the thick dragon tail. A terrifying force erupted, and the dragon tail, which was 2 to 3 times the size of the Northern King's, was tightly wrapped around the Azure Dragon's chest from front to back. A painful roar immediately came from the Azure Dragon's mouth. Roar! Along with the roar came waves of powerful lightning energy. They ruthlessly bombarded the Northern King's body from top to bottom. However, everyone present could clearly see that when the powerful lightning energy approached the Northern King, a strange suction force surged out from the latter's body. Any lightning that came close to the Northern King was unceremoniously devoured by the Northern King. This is his puppet. In the next moment, the expressions on the faces of Qin Yun and the rest, who had some understanding of the Northern King, changed. Although others did not know, they knew very well that Xiao Yan's puppet had an inexplicable suppressive effect on lightning energy. Lightning, which was extremely dangerous and overbearing in the eyes of others, was not dangerous to the Northern King. Instead, it would help him grow. Stop him. Don't let that puppet devour this lightning dragon. At this moment, Qin Yun's group finally understood the reason why Xiao Yan had appeared. They could not help but exclaim. Yan He and the other 2 behind him were the first to charge toward Xiao Yan. After them was the other 9-star Do Di. As for the black-robed person beside Qin Yun, he did not take even half a step away from Qin Yun. It was as though he was purposely protecting the latter. On the other side, a terrifying suction force continued to surge out from within the Northern King's body. A moment later, the dragon tail that had been wrapped around his chest had strangely entered the Northern King's body. At this moment, the Northern King was devouring the lightning dragon at a speed visible to the naked eye. The lightning dragon was completely unaware of this. It continued to use lightning to bombard the Northern King's body. However, the numerous lightning strikes were all swallowed into the Northern King's body. After a quick refinement, they were all absorbed by the Northern King. At the same time, the Northern King's strength was also rapidly increasing. It was also at this moment that Yan He and the other 2, as well as the other black-robed person, moved together. They spread out and arrived behind the Northern King, intending to attack. However, just as they were about to attack, a black figure suddenly flashed out and blocked in front of them. It was Xiao Yan. Cuckoo, instead of attacking me, the master, you want to attack my puppet. What a good idea. Xiao Yan laughed coldly. The corner of his mouth was lifted into a mocking smile. Xiao Yan, don't tell me that you can't wait to die. Yan He let out a cold cry. At the same time that his body trembled, a powerful Do Qi energy swept out from within his body, bringing about waves of wind pressure. Ha! The other 3 people around him also let out a low cry. Their bodies shook as they released the Do Qi within their bodies. Together, they pressured Xiao Yan. Force Elephant Skill. Activate. Xiao Yan let out an explosive cry in his heart. The enormous force within his body immediately gathered. The illusionary figure behind him merged into his body the moment it rose, causing Xiao Yan's strength to become even stronger. At the same time, the Do Qi within the vortex also began to circulate rapidly. The enormous Do Qi quickly covered his entire body. Qi. Yan He was the first to bear the brunt. In the blink of an eye, his body had already arrived in front of Xiao Yan. He twisted his body and sent a kick towards Xiao Yan's chest. The whistling wind whistled in front of him. Xiao Yan's expression was calm. Enormous spiritual energy surged out. All the movements of the person in front of him became slow under the cover of the spiritual energy. After which, Xiao Yan turned his body and stood to the side. He grabbed the latter's ankle and violently flung him away. However, without giving Xiao Yan any chance to catch his breath, the human figure in the empty space in front of him once again rushed over. Do Qi shot out and aimed directly at Xiao Yan's throat. His footsteps changed as he used the sky extinction steps. Those Do Chi pillars that were shooting over narrowly brushed past Xiao Yan's body. Soon after, Xiao Yan's right hand suddenly clenched into a fist. A powerful energy crazily agglomerated on his fist. With a punch, he forcefully forced back a 9-star Do Di who was charging over in front of him. Damn it, this brat's physical strength is really frightening. The expression of the black-robed person changed slightly. His mouth involuntarily cursed. The hand that had just received a punch from Xiao Yan was currently trembling under his sleeves. In the face of Xiao Yan's powerful physical strength, even though he was a 9-star Do Di, he was still defeated in one blow without any preparation. Xiao Yan's expression was grave as he was surrounded by 4 people. Facing 4 9-star Do Di at the same time really made him feel powerless. In the beginning, he was able to use the Force Elephant skill to block 1 or 2 of their attacks. However, as his physical strength continued to deplete, some of the drawbacks were gradually revealed. His physical strength was gradually unable to keep up. On the other hand, the 4 Do Di in front of him were still attacking fiercely. During this period of time, there were a few times when they wanted to stop the Northern King from swallowing the lightning dragon, but they were forcefully stopped by Xiao Yan. By relying on the sky extinction steps, even if Xiao Yan was unable to defeat the 4 people in front of him, he was still confident that he could protect himself. In this kind of high-intensity battle, Xiao Yan's strength was depleted extremely quickly. However, at the same time, his combat experience was also becoming increasingly profound. Just think about it. The current Xiao Yan was able to remain unscathed under the attacks of 4 9-star Do Di. If he were to face a 9-star Do Di again in the future, wouldn't he be able to easily deal with them? As for Chen Zhan and the others, although they wished that they could kill Xiao Yan in their hearts, they could only helplessly withdraw their thoughts when they recalled the lightning penalty oath. They only hated Xiao Yan's craftiness in using the lightning penalty oath to restrict their movements. Damn it, this brat is really troublesome. We can't be delayed by him any longer. Attack first and destroy the lightning dragon. The black-robed man cursed hatefully. His body moved and he quickly swept past Xiao Yan. He wanted to take advantage of the fact that the latter was being delayed by Yan He and the other 2 to step forward and destroy the lightning dragon that was about to be completely devoured by the Northern King. However, in the next instant, when the black-robed man arrived in front of the North King, the originally motionless North King suddenly turned around and fiercely pressed the remaining dragon head from his chest into his body. Almost at the same time, he raised both his fists, and with the terrifying power of lightning, he ruthlessly smashed them into the chest of the black-robed man, who was still in a daze. Bang! In an instant, a frighteningly powerful force immediately gushed out from the Northern King's fists. It was mixed with an extremely powerful and violent lightning force. With an unstoppable force, it instantly destroyed the black-robed man's meridians and internal organs. In just an instant, the black-robed man was seriously injured. Ugh! The black-robed man's face suddenly turned deathly pale. A large mouthful of blood involuntarily spurted out from his mouth. Soon after, it was instantly destroyed into nothingness by the lightning that lingered around the Northern King's body. Bang! As a muffled explosion sounded from within the black-robed man's body, the latter's body immediately flew backwards uncontrollably. Soon after, he heavily smashed into the stone door of the hall. A powerful force and lightning force poured out, and the heavy stone door opened with a loud bang. In an instant, the 2 battlefields simultaneously quieted down. The crowd below also cast their shocked gazes towards the purple-gold figure in the air, whose body flickered with lightning. At the very front of the crowd, the faces of Chen Zhan and Qin Yun's group also turned ashen at this moment. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 935. The Northern King had seriously injured that 9-star Do Di with a single strike. This powerful deterrence caused everyone present to be shocked. Chen Zhan, Qin Yun, and the other factions who had a grudge with Xiao Yan had an especially gloomy expression on their faces at this moment. This was especially true for Qin Yun. The one who had been seriously injured by the Northern King earlier was his subordinate. However, from the looks of it, that fellow would no longer have the fate to enter this old tomb. A seriously injured 9-star Do Di would require a very long period of time just to recover from his injuries. The environment of this ancient tomb was extremely dangerous. Adding this to the other factions, his seriously injured body would sooner or later become a burden to them. Moreover, even if Qin Yun agreed to continue bringing him along, this fellow beside him would definitely not agree. However, The thing that caused Qin Yun to feel the most solemn was the Northern King, who had swallowed the lightning dragon. From the looks of that strike earlier, the Northern King's strength was likely comparable to an intermediate 9-star Do D. Such strength, in addition to Xiao Yan, was sufficient to shake any faction present. Qin Yun's expression involuntarily became even more green when he thought of this. He had not expected that Xiao Yan's fighting strength would soar to such an extent within half a year. If he was unable to kill Xiao Yan during this trip to the old tomb, Xiao Yan would definitely become a great threat to him in the near future. The greater the strength that Xiao Yan possessed, the greater the threat he posed to them. Xiao Yan was the first person who had caused Qin Yun to feel such a threat since he was born. At this moment, Xiao Yan's body flashed. In the blink of an eye, he was already standing beside the Northern King. His gaze swept over the crowd below. When he saw the green faces of Qin Yun's group, he involuntarily laughed coldly in his heart. His gaze quickly landed on the Northern King. The Northern King's fighting strength had clearly increased after swallowing this lightning dragon. Although it had reached the intermediate 9-star Do D level, it was obvious that the lightning strength within its body had yet to be fully absorbed and refined. Xiao Yan was still unable to control the enormous lightning energy contained within the lightning dragon's body in the lightning tunnel. However, Xiao Yan believed that with the Northern King's unique physique, he would be able to refine all of the lightning energy in the near future. At that time, the Northern King's strength would rise once again. With this thought in mind, the corners of Xiao Yan's mouth could not help but reveal a satisfied smile. From the looks of it, this trip to the Tianju ancient tomb was already worth it. Not only had his strength stabilized at the mid-6-star Do D realm, but the Northern King had also reached the level of a 9-star Do D. With such a combination, Xiao Yan believed that as long as he did not encounter an origin transformation expert, he would be able to guarantee his safety. With a thought, Xiao Yan stored the North King into his storage ring. Then, he lifted his head and looked at the open door of the hall. Behind the stone door, Xiao Yan could see some buildings. However, the group had not stepped in yet, so they could not see clearly. The tip of Xiao Yan's foot pressed against the empty air. His body did not hesitate at all as he charged through the door of the hall. Tianju was the strongest person in the western region. Xiao Yan was not worried that there would be any hidden danger within his ancient tomb. Just like the lightning tunnel and the lightning dragon that they had met earlier, any mechanism would be completely placed in front of them. This was the pride of a strong person. They would disdain to use such despicable methods. Xiao Yan was not worried about Tianju being the strongest person in the western region. After Xiao Yan entered, everyone behind him also entered in a single file. It was as though they were afraid that Xiao Yan would sweep away all the treasures within. Chen Zhan and the others exchanged glances with each other. After which, their bodies moved and entered the large hall in front of them. Once everyone passed through the door, everything in front of them gradually became clear. Everyone's eyes were filled with shock as they stared at the scene in front of them. Everyone was dumbfounded. Even the people from the major factions could not help but click their tongues in amazement. At the front of the group, Xiao Yan lifted his eyes to look at the vast and boundless buildings in front of him. He was also shocked. At this moment, what appeared in front of everyone was a vast underground city that stretched as far as the eye could see. The boundless buildings extended to the end of their line of sight. Every building was displayed in a different posture. Although it had experienced nearly 1,000 years of history, the buildings did not decay due to the erosion of time. Instead, they appeared ancient and awe-inspiring. Such magnificent buildings could be said to be peerless. In the entire world, there was probably no other city that could compare to them. As for the crowd that had rushed in, they hurriedly spread out. After glancing around with greedy eyes, they hurriedly rushed into the buildings and could not wait to search for the treasures in the ancient tomb. Looking at the crowd, Xiao Yan sighed and shook his head. He could not help but feel pity for this ancient city. Immediately after, Xiao Yan turned his gaze and immediately recognized the path. He looked straight ahead. There, in the center of the entire city, was a straight and wide street that seemed to be specially made to lead the way for them. Seeing this, Xiao Yan did not hesitate. He followed the street and flew forward at an extremely fast speed. He hoped to pass through the city in the shortest amount of time. This time, Xiao Yan's goal was extremely clear. He only wanted to obtain the soul source energy and the other part of the origin returning art that Tianju had left behind. As for the cultivation inheritance, although Xiao Yan was also interested, he clearly knew that there would be many experts who would enter the ancient tomb this time around. Once they saw the cultivation inheritance of Tianju, they would definitely fight. Under such circumstances, even Xiao Yan had no choice but to retreat. Hence, the chances of obtaining the soul source energy and the origin returning art were greater. At the same time, they were also the most attractive to Xiao Yan. After all, these two things were crucial to Xiao Xian's resurrection. Even if he did not want the Dou Qi inheritance, Xiao Yan must obtain the soul source energy and the origin returning art. Chen Zhen, Wu Jitian and the rest frowned slightly when they saw Xiao Yan's impatient manner. Their bodies moved and they led the experts from their respective sects as they hurriedly gave chase. Behind them, Yiluotan slowly passed through the stone door. Just as he entered, the black-robed person beside Qin Yun exchanged glances with him without batting an eyelid. At the same time, Yiluotian's sleeves fluttered in a strange manner. However, he did not alarm anyone around him. Behind him, over a dozen long-robed sect members whose faces could not be seen quickly followed and entered the stone door. What should we do with this fellow? At this moment, Qin Yun's attention was focused on the seriously injured 9-star Dou Di. The latter had already fainted. His aura had already dropped to the extreme. If he was not treated, it was likely that he would die at any moment. Oh, this fellow, huh? What is the point of keeping a person who is about to die? But he is after all me. Qi. Qin Yun frowned when he heard the hoarse voice of the black-robed person. Before the words from his mouth sounded, the black-robed person waved his large sleeve. A strange suction force surged out from under his sleeve. Soon after, one could see the seriously injured 9-star Dou Di's body trembling intensely uncontrollably. After which, a somewhat illusionary human figure flew into his sleeve and ceased moving in the blink of an eye. You. Young master, there is no need to panic. He is merely a piece of trash. I am merely helping you take him in. Moreover, although you will lose a 9-star Dou Di because of this, you will also obtain an even greater strength at the same time. Qin Yun's expression was green. He was just about to open his mouth when he was stopped by the strange laughter of the black-robed person. What do you mean by these words? Qin Yun frowned tightly. A 9-star Dou Di was something that even he could not afford to lose. Yet, this fellow actually dared to make sarcastic remarks here. If it was not because he was afraid of the latter's strength, it was likely that he would not have been able to endure it. Humph humph, now is still not the time. You will know not long later. However, before that, it is best that we follow that group of people. Otherwise, if we lose them, it will be extremely disadvantageous to us. Qin Yun was initially startled when he heard this. He turned his gaze and saw that Chen Zhen's group was about to disappear from the edge of his sight. Only then did he viciously glare at the black-robed person. A cold snort was emitted from his nose. He swung his sleeves violently and led Yan He and the other two behind him as they hurriedly gave chase. After which, the black-robed person watched Qin Yun's back. The face under the black robe that was covered by the mask revealed a strange smile. After which, he moved and followed closely behind. Just as the black-robed person followed a few steps behind, two figures wearing black robes slowly stepped in from outside the stone door. Two pairs of eyes under the black robe stared intently at the back of the black-robed person. A glint flickered deep within their eyes. As the human flow continued to enter, an old man wearing a white robe was following behind a handsome young man who was also wearing a white robe. The few people following behind them were also wearing similar outfits. If one were to look carefully, one would be able to discover that there was a clan emblem on their chests. The picture on the clan emblem looked like a bird spreading its wings and soaring, appearing extremely domineering. At this moment, this group of people was stepping into this place with slightly faster footsteps. Numerous gazes swept in all directions, appearing to be searching for something. Young master, that Xiao Yan does not appear to be staying here. Beside the young man, the white-robed old man's turbid eyes swept across the huge city in front of him. Surprise flashed across his eyes, but at the same time, he did not see Xiao Yan's figure, who had already disappeared into the distance. He immediately frowned and reported to the young man beside him. Don't stop. Go straight to the main hall. He must be there. Hearing this, the young man's eyes immediately narrowed. An ice-cold glint flashed across the depths of his sky-blue eyes. Immediately after, his body moved. The few people behind him walked into the air together with him. They followed the straight street in front of them and quickly flew towards the depths of the ancient tomb. Calm. Wonderful book house. Chapter 936. The vastness of the city seemed to have far exceeded Xiao Yan's expectations. By the time he regained his senses, the noise behind him had already disappeared. As for the tall stone door, it had also disappeared without a trace. Until a certain moment, a change suddenly occurred in the straight streets of the city that stretched as far as the eye could see. The street that was originally straight to the end suddenly split in the middle and split into 5 different streets. Xiao Yan's body also stopped in front of these 5 streets. Sweeping his gaze across these 5 streets, Xiao Yan frowned slightly. In his heart, he recalled what Tianning had said to him back then. Within the Tianju ancient tomb, there were 3 different halls. The lifetime of Tianju's cultivation was also split into 3 and sealed in a hall. The method to open the hall was to use the skill that Tianju was famous for. However, looking at these 5 streets in front of him, Xiao Yan could imagine that the path that led to the 3 halls should be among these 5 streets. However, it was a little troublesome to find the correct hall from among them. Even though only 2 of these 5 streets were fake, there was still the risk of making a mistake if one was not careful. Once Chen Zhen's group managed to seize the opportunity, regardless of whether it was the Douqi inheritance, the spiritual source strength, or the return to source skill, he might miss all of them by the skin of his teeth. Regardless of how small the chances were, he could not afford to make a mistake. Sweeping his gaze back and forth across the 5 streets in front of him, Xiao Yan's brows were tightly knit together. He did not know how to choose in his heart. Once he made the wrong choice, it was extremely likely that it would result in an irreversible outcome. He could not afford to make a mistake. However, under the probing of Xiao Yan's spiritual strength, these 5 streets did not have any unusual energy ripples. In other words, if he wanted to accurately find the hall where the Douqi inheritance was located, other than relying on his intuition and luck, there was no other possibility. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan's heart involuntarily sank. Although the chances of making a mistake were very small, he could not afford to make any mistakes. However, the current situation was that other than relying on luck, there was nothing else he could do. There seemed to be a special restriction within this space. His spiritual strength was blocked when it spread to 1,000 feet around him. This also caused Xiao Yan to be unable to find the end of these 5 streets. The restriction of his spiritual strength caused Xiao Yan's heart to become even heavier. However, it was also at this moment that Xiao Yan's dark black eyes focused slightly. A weak spiritual ripple was transmitted from the storage ring. Immediately, Xiao Yan's spirit, Xiao Xian's soul. At this moment, the unusual spiritual fluctuation had spread out from this place. Buzz. Just as Xiao Yan was overjoyed, Xiao Xian's soul in the jade bottle once again emitted an extremely weak spiritual ripple. From the looks of it, it seemed to be attracted by something. It was not difficult to guess that in this ancient tomb, the only things that could attract Xiao Xian's spiritual strength should be esteemed Tianju's spiritual origin energy and the returnance technique. Although the spiritual ripple emitted from Xiao Yan's soul was extremely weak, he was still able to accurately capture it with his powerful spiritual strength as a rank 4 alchemist. Xiao Yan followed the direction in which the thread of spiritual ripple was spreading and looked over. Very quickly, he confirmed 3 streets. Instantly, a joyous smile appeared on Xiao Yan's solemn face a moment ago. Forcefully suppressing the excitement in his heart, Xiao Yan's eyes brightened as he looked at the 3 streets. As if on purpose, the 3 streets that led to the halls were the streets on the left, right and center. As for the 2 streets in the center, they were fake. After finding the exact location of the 3 halls, Xiao Yan pondered for a moment, then turned around and chose the street on the left. In order to avoid those who decisively chose to barge in, Xiao Yan felt that it was safer to take the side streets. Since he had already chosen the direction, Xiao Yan's figure quickly disappeared. After a while, Chen Zhan and the others arrived. Faced with 5 different paths, the few people who arrived one after another hesitated. Being unaware of the truth, they had even more misgivings in their hearts than Xiao Yan. The result was just as Xiao Yan had expected. Most people decisively chose to go all the way to the end. Only a small number of people chose the other paths. However, the fortunate thing was that no one was interested in the path that Xiao Yan was on. Until a certain moment, a group of people led by a young man arrived at the fork in the road. Young master, Xiao Yan has removed his aura. This subordinate is unable to determine where he has gone. The white-robed old man beside the young man frowned. Finally, he helplessly opened his mouth. Since I have come to look for you, I have naturally thought of this. The young man smiled indifferently when he heard this. He extended his hand and the storage ring on his finger flickered. Immediately, a green-colored jade tablet appeared in the young man's hand. If Xiao Yan was present at this moment, he would definitely be able to recognize that this green-colored jade tablet was a Qi Hanyu. According to what he knew, other than Lang Bingshuang, only Murong Chanqian and himself possessed this thing. Qi Hanyu appeared in the young man's hand. The young man poured some Do Qi into his palm. Soon after, an unknown energy ripple immediately spread from it. The young man's eyes followed it and looked over. At a glance, he identified the street on the left. That was also the direction where Xiao Yan was located. Humph, give chase. Today, I want to see just how capable you are. The young man let out a cold cry. The group of people beside him immediately flew swiftly toward the street on the left. The young man ceased hesitating. His body moved and he quickly followed. An hour later, Xiao Yan's forward-flying body finally came to a stop. At this moment, an ancient hall with a tightly shut stone door appeared in front of him. There was no need to think too much. This was definitely the place where the Do Qi inheritance of Tianju was sealed. However, compared to this, Xiao Yan was more curious about whether the spiritual essence strength and the return to source skill would also exist in this place. Xiao Yan's body moved as this thought flashed across his heart. The sky extinction step was unleashed on the empty ground in front of this large hall. Soon after, the tightly shut stone door in front of him appeared to have sensed something. It slowly opened in front of Xiao Yan's fiery hot gaze. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 937. The stone door of the large hall slowly opened and Xiao Yan's field of vision gradually expanded. When the stone door was completely opened, what appeared in front of Xiao Yan was an enormous empty palace. The interior of the palace was extremely large and spacious. Only in the deepest part of the large palace was one able to see an enormous stone chair. It was perfectly fitted to the wall behind it. At a glance, it appeared as though the original wall had been chiseled away and the chair had been carved from it. It was not difficult to imagine that the stone chair was the seat of the owner of this tomb, Tianju. However, at this moment, there was not a speck of dust on the stone chair and not a single person could be seen. Even Tianju's skeleton was nowhere to be seen. From the looks of it, Tianju's skeleton did not exist here. Xiao Yan was not concerned about this. He was only curious about Tianju's spiritual source strength and the Guiyuan art. That was all. After taking a few steps into the large hall, Xiao Yan immediately saw a huge energy cluster floating at the center of the large hall. Xiao Yan's intervention caused the originally motionless cluster of light to emit some energy ripples. Hum hum hum. A slight buzzing sound was emitted and a majestic energy aura swept out from the energy cluster of light and blasted toward Xiao Yan. Although this energy aura appeared weak, when it was blasted out, even with Xiao Yan's mental strength, the expression on his face could not help but change. Although this aura could not be considered strong, its strength was something that even Xiao Yan could not underestimate. Hum! Xiao Yan raised both of his arms and the Do Qi in his body swiftly surged. Soon after, he blocked the energy aura with some difficulty. At the moment when he blocked it, Xiao Yan could not help but take half a step back. From this, one could see just how strong this aura was. Is it a Do Qi inheritance? Since that is the case, where is Tianju's spiritual source strength? Xiao Yan muttered to himself as he scanned the entire hall with his eyes. However, even after scanning the entire hall, he was unable to find any power related to the soul, let alone the returnance art. Is it not here? Immediately, a suspicious thought surfaced in Xiao Yan's mind. If the spiritual source energy and the origin returning art were not here, where would they be? Could it be in the other two halls? If esteemed Lord Tianju's idea was to let the fated obtain it, then it was not impossible. However, if that was the case, then wouldn't esteemed Lord Tianju's soul source and the origin returning technique fall into the hands of others? Not good. I have to return immediately. Shocked, Xiao Yan ignored the battle Qi inheritance in front of him and turned around, intending to leave this place. However, in the next moment, the instant Xiao Yan turned around, a group of people dressed in long white robes swiftly poured in from the entrance of the hall behind him. The two thick stone doors were also tightly shut after these people entered. For some unknown reason, Xiao Yan's heart suddenly sank. At the same time, he raised his eyes and looked at the group of people in front of him. The person leading them was actually a young man who was slightly older than him. At this moment, when Xiao Yan looked at the young man, the latter was also staring at him with an unfriendly gaze. Even the eyes of the group of people behind him were similarly ice-cold. Seeing this, Xiao Yan narrowed his eyes. The corner of his eyes glanced at the Douqi inheritance in the hall behind him. After which, he looked at the group of people in front of him and said in a deep voice, "The few of you, I can give you the Douqi inheritance in this hall. However, I want to leave this place now. I wonder if you can make it convenient for me?" While speaking, Xiao Yan's gaze landed on the young man who was leading the group. His gaze stared intently at the latter. He could tell that the one who was truly in charge of this group was this young man. Hence, whether he could get these people to make way and leave this place depended on this young man's decision. "You are Xiao Yan?" Although the young man had already confirmed the latter's identity, he still could not help but ask. Hearing this, Xiao Yan's heart sank. These people were indeed targeting him. However, he had only just met them at this moment. Moreover, the other party could not even completely confirm his identity. He had never met them before this. How could he have any enmity with them? "Answer my question." The young man's voice sank as he cried out with a frown. Faced with this unprovoked hostility, Xiao Yan also felt some anger in his heart. He was currently in a hurry to leave. Where would he find the time to delay with them? Immediately, his voice sank as he similarly cried out in a low voice, "I am Xiao Yan. However, this seems to be the first time that I have met all of you. If there is nothing else, I hope that all of you can move aside. I can allow all of you to take away the Douqi inheritance in this hall." "Humph, since you admit that you are Xiao Yan, then, attack. Beat him up. Teach him a good lesson." However, the young man did not act as Xiao Yan had imagined. After confirming the identity of the person in front of him, the young man waved his arm and pointed his delicate finger at Xiao Yan. At the same time, a stern cry was emitted from his mouth. The Douqi in his body surged. The group of people behind him also charged towards Xiao Yan. The group of 13 people included 2 9-star Douqi, 4 8-star Douqi, and 6 7-star Douqi. As for the young man, perhaps it was because he was wearing some kind of special accessory, but Xiao Yan was unable to confirm the latter's cultivation before exchanging blows with him. If it was an ordinary time, Xiao Yan would definitely withdraw as much as he could when faced with 13 high-class Douqi at the same time. However, the current situation left Xiao Yan with no way out. If he wanted to leave this place, not only could he not retreat, but he also needed to finish off this group of people in front of him within a short period of time. With a flick of his finger, a purple-gold glow immediately appeared beside him. The Northern King, whose strength had just broken through to the intermediate 9-star Douqi level, had met with a tough battle at this moment. "I still have something to do. Let's end this quickly." With a low cry, a thought passed through Xiao Yan's mind. The Douqi in his body surged. His body and the Northern King by his side shot out explosively at the same time. They went all out and met the 13 elite Douqi head-on. Although these people were already aware of Xiao Yan's cultivation level, they did not see the scene of Xiao Yan killing Jianming with a punch despite having seen the Northern King swallow the lightning dragon and leaping to become a 9-star Douqi. Hence, this group of 13 high-class Douqi still knew that Xiao Yan's fighting strength was that of a 6-star Douqi. This would definitely give them a great surprise. Chapter 938. What shameless boasting. Even if this puppet of yours has the strength of a 9-star Douqi, you are overestimating its strength if you wish to deal with us. A white-robed old man from the group of elite Douqi immediately laughed coldly when he heard the words that were emitted from Xiao Yan's mouth. At the same time, his body shook and the speed at which he charged forward immediately became even faster. In the blink of an eye, he had already arrived in front of Xiao Yan. The other 9-star Douqi flew and blocked in front of the Northern King. His sharp attacks smashed toward the latter. They did not dare to be the slightest bit careless in the face of a 9-star Douqi puppet. Xiao Yan looked at the old man who was being soaked in hot water. A feeling of doubt involuntarily rose in his heart. At such a close distance, he was able to clearly sense the repulsion and enmity in the latter's eyes. However, that kind of enmity seemed to be far from the point of wanting to get rid of him. In other words, it was just as the young man had said. Their aim was really to teach him a lesson and not to kill him. Xiao Yan involuntarily felt even more surprised when he thought of this in his heart. "Brat, You dare to be distracted when facing a 9-star Do-D. Are you seeking death? The old man cried out sternly. His raised hand suddenly smashed down toward Xiao Yan. Powerful Do-Chi carried circular invisible ripples in the surrounding empty space. It was about to land on Xiao Yan's shoulder. It was also at this moment that Xiao Yan's body suddenly twisted. The shriveled hand of the old man brushed past Xiao Yan's shoulder and quietly turned a corner of his black robe into pieces. Why is this brat's speed? The old man's heart was startled. At such a close distance, even he would have difficulty dodging. However, Xiao Yan in front of him was actually able to do it so easily. This really caused him to be shocked. However, the thing that caused him to be even more shocked was yet to come. Bang! Just as the old man was feeling shocked by Xiao Yan's reaction speed, Xiao Yan's hand had unknowingly landed on his shoulder. Soon after, an enormous force surged out from Xiao Yan's palm. With just one strike, the old man's body was forced back. At the same time, Xiao Yan's other hand was also raised. His body twisted left and right, dodging the attacks of the few elite Do-D. After which, both of his palms were extended. Either a punch or a palm. He forced the 10 elite Do-D that were charging toward him. Were forced back. 10 high-class Do-D. This kind of lineup could be considered a top-notch lineup in the outside world. They were existences that could do whatever they wanted in the entire Western region. However, at this moment, they were unable to even block a single punch in Xiao Yan's hands. Under the situation where the Force Elephant skill and Do-Chi were used together, Xiao Yan's fighting strength was already not inferior to a 9-star Do-D. His frightening physical body, which far exceeded that of an ordinary person, caused each of his punches to be filled with strength. Unless it was a 9-star Do-D, any elite Do-D below that level was destined to be unable to withstand a single punch from Xiao Yan. As for the old man from earlier, if he had not underestimated Xiao Yan's fighting strength, he would not have ended up being forced back by Xiao Yan with just one strike. Unfortunately, his absolute confidence in himself and the disdain he felt for Xiao Yan from the bottom of his heart caused him to pay the price. At the same time, the 9-star Do-D, who was fighting with the Northern King in the battleground on the other side, had an ashen expression on his old face at this moment. The muscles on the corner of his mouth twitched repeatedly. He did not expect that this puppet in front of him would be so frightening. Even with his strength as an intermediate 9-star Do-D, he was not able to gain the slightest advantage in a fight with it. Instead, he was shocked to discover that the strength of the Northern King was increasing with each collision. It seemed to be showing signs of breaking through to the advanced 9-star Do-D class. Damn it! Isn't this thing a little too monstrous? Old ghost, what are all of you doing? Quickly, that brat! The old man let out a soft curse in his mouth. He had just turned his head and looked in the direction where Xiao Yan was at when the curse that had yet to leave his mouth was immediately shocked by Xiao Yan's frightening fighting strength. Even his repeatedly dodging body could not help but become slightly sluggish. The Northern King caught this moment of distraction. By the time the old man recovered from his shock, the Northern King's fist had violently smashed into the old man's chest. Bang! The old man's face paled after a low and deep thump sounded. A trace of blood involuntarily flowed out from the corner of his mouth. His body also flew back involuntarily. Soon after, he was stopped by the old man. After confirming that his injuries were not serious, all of them turned their solemn eyes to the Northern King. Xiao Yan had sent a 7-star Do-D flying with a palm in midair. After which, he withdrew his gaze. His eyes turned and landed on the white-robed young man. The expression on his face had also recovered its calmness. I won't kill them. Now you should move aside. Xiao Yan's tone was calm. However, it was not difficult to hear the trace of impatience contained within it. His heart was still concerned about the spiritual essence strength and the return to source skill. He really did not wish to stay any longer. The young man's face involuntarily revealed a solemn expression when he heard this. However, he did not move aside. Instead, he raised his arm and extended his hand toward Xiao Yan. Immediately, his 5 fingers slowly clenched tightly. His body suddenly disappeared from the spot the moment his hand clenched into a fist. The next time he appeared, he was already in front of Xiao Yan. A fist violently smashed toward the latter's face. Xiao Yan's eyes hardened. He involuntarily felt a shock in his heart. This white-clothed, fluttering young man was actually a 9-star Do-D. Such speed could be considered one of the best among most 9-star Do-D. However, the person he was facing was Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan raised his hand the moment the young man's body appeared. He flipped his hand and blocked the young man's punch. Soon after, he rotated his wrist and it landed on the latter's left shoulder. Bang! However, the young man's body emitted a bang the moment Xiao Yan's hand landed. It turned into fog and swiftly disappeared. Ha! Xiao Yan's heart was slightly startled. He could not help but feel surprised. The young man's speed was actually so fast that even he was unable to catch him? It should be known that under the cover of a powerful spiritual strength, it was impossible for the young man to completely dodge regardless of how fast he was. However, at that moment, the latter's aura had completely disappeared from Xiao Yan's spiritual strength detection. In other words, the reason why the young man was able to dodge his attack was not because of his speed. Instead, it was because, Great Way Energy huh? It is really surprising. Great Way Energy. Xiao Yan immediately guessed that other than his void Great Way, there was another Great Way Energy that could display such shocking speed. It was the Great Way of Wind. Soon after, just as Xiao Yan discovered the Great Way Energy that the young man had used, a palm suddenly landed on Xiao Yan's back. Soon after, a powerful force suddenly gushed out. Chi! This time around it was the young man's turn to miss. What? You are not the only one who can control the Great Way Energy. A faint voice sounded beside the young man's ear. At the same time, an icy cold palm landed on the young man's neck. Chapter 939. Everything that happened in the hall seemed to take a long time to describe. However, in reality, the battle only lasted for a few minutes. In order to resolve the problem in front of him as soon as possible, Xiao Yan did not hold back at all this time. Other than the fact that his injuries were not fatal, his attack speed and strength could be described as terrifying to the people in front of him. In front of the tightly shut stone door, Xiao Yan's hand grabbed the young man's neck from behind. Fighting chi gathered in his palm. Even though he did not plan to kill this guy, he did not mind killing him if the latter dared to do anything excessive. After all, he already had many enemies. There was no harm in adding one more. The power of the Great Way? I did not expect you to be able to control the power of the Great Way. However, do you think that you can control me just like that? Being controlled by Xiao Yan, the young man laughed coldly. With a thought, he wanted to use the power of the Great Way to escape from Xiao Yan's hand. Swoosh! After escaping from Xiao Yan's hand, the young man's face was cold. He flew backwards and immediately stood in the void not far away from Xiao Yan. He looked at Xiao Yan with a cold smile and said coldly, "Humph. Up until now, no one has been able to truly control me. Even if you can place your hand on my neck, you can't." Is that so? Hearing this, Xiao Yan smiled mockingly. There was an inexplicable meaning in his words. What do you mean? The young man's face sank. He had a bad feeling. However, looking at the situation before him, his worries were unnecessary. Haven't you noticed that you are still surrounded by my power of the Great Way since the beginning? What did you say? Xiao Yan smiled faintly. However, the young man's expression changed drastically in an instant. He turned his gaze. At the same time, 6 tents appeared in the void around him. They quickly gathered and surrounded the young man. Under Xiao Yan's control, the young man returned to Xiao Yan under the control of the Great Way of the Void. Damn it, what time is this? The young man was shocked. He frantically mobilized the power of the Great Path in an attempt to break free from the control of the 6 tents. However, he was not so lucky every time. Under the control of Xiao Yan's Great Way of the Void, the Great Way strength that he could control was not enough to allow him to escape. His continuous struggle would only cause the 6 tents that were tightly wrapped around his body to become even more restrained, causing him even greater pain. I think you should save your strength. Even if you have also grasped the power of the Great Way, from your appearance earlier, you should have only comprehended it not long ago. I think your Great Way of Wind can only be used 6 times at most. With just that, you are unable to break free from my Great Way of Void. Xiao Yan said with a smile when he saw the young man trying to resist. What? The Great Tao of Void? You have comprehended the Great Tao of Void. The young man originally thought that Xiao Yan could guess that he had only comprehended the power of the Great Way for a short period of time. This was already shocking enough, but when he heard that the Great Way that Xiao Yan controlled was the Great Way of the Void, the shock in his heart grew even more. The power of the Great Way was the most difficult power to control in the world. It was far more powerful than Battle Chi and Genesis Chi, and couldn't be tolerated by the human body. Among all the different attributes of the Great Way of the world, the Great Way of the Void was ranked at the forefront. The Great Way of the Void was far more powerful than the Great Way of Wind. Whether it was in terms of power or speed, the Great Way of the Void could be said to be crushing. At this moment, the young man finally understood why the Great Way of the Great Way that he was so proud of was so useless in front of Xiao Yan. On the other side, the two elders and the injured Do Di hurriedly surrounded Xiao Yan when they saw that their young master was being controlled by Xiao Yan. As for the North King, he returned to Xiao Yan's side under his control. His empty eyes constantly scanned the surrounding people, and the murderous aura that seeped out from his body made everyone shudder. Xiao Yan's eyes involuntarily brightened as his gaze swept across the North King's body. From the flickering black lightning on the North King's body, it could be seen that the lightning power accumulated in his body was rapidly being refined and absorbed. Perhaps it was because of the battle earlier, but the speed at which the lightning was being refined and integrated in the North King's body had increased significantly. This made Xiao Yan pleasantly surprised. Although Xiao Yan had yet to find the spiritual essence strength and the origin returning skill, this was quite a good piece of news for him. Kid, we have indeed underestimated your strength. However, I still have to tell you that he is someone you cannot kill. If you kill him, you will definitely regret it. The white-robed elder who had attacked Xiao Yan earlier stared at Xiao Yan with a grave expression and spoke in an extremely low voice after stopping the few people beside him who could not resist attacking. Xiao Yan merely smiled in a non-committal manner when he heard this. He had really heard too many of such words. He had also done a countless number of things that went against this result. Hence, Xiao Yan did not pay any heed to the old man's threatening words. Of course, he would not really kill the young man because of this. It was just as he had suspected in his heart. Although this group of people had enmity toward him, it was not to the extent that they had to kill him. Hence, rather than killing them, Xiao Yan was more curious as to why this group of people had attacked him. I do not know whether I will regret it if I kill him. However, I am certain that if you do not tell me who you are and why you have come to find trouble with me, he will definitely die. Xiao Yan's gaze was indifferent as he looked at the elder in front of him. His expression contained a stern expression. When the latter heard these words, he stared at him with a gloomy expression. It was a long while later before he opened his mouth and spoke in a low voice. Brat, do you still remember Murong Qianqian? The expression on Xiao Yan's face instantly stilled when the elder's words left his mouth. At the same time, his mind involuntarily recalled the exquisite young lady whom he had met when he had first entered the Shilin mountain range. After these years, it was likely that the latter had already grown to become increasingly slim and elegant. Qianqian, huh? I wonder how that girl has been all these years. Xiao Yan muttered softly in his mouth. His heart involuntarily felt some regret at how quickly time had passed. However, what does this matter have to do with Qianqian? Xiao Yan frowned. The Do Qi in his body involuntarily began to circulate. If this matter was disadvantageous to Murong Qianqian, he would immediately make a move and kill everyone present. The one who is currently being restrained by you is called Murong Xian. He is Miss Qianqian's blood brother. Chapter 940. As he absent-mindedly stared at the city below, Xiao Yan's figure rapidly dashed through the streets. His heart was in a mess. Just now, after hearing Murong Xian's general description, he finally understood why the latter had attacked him. A few years ago, ever since Murong Qianqian had been brought back to the clan by her fourth uncle, Murong Hao, that girl had been depressed all day long. She seemed to have something on her mind and was no longer as lively as before. If it was in the past, such a quiet girl would definitely make her father and brother feel gratified. After all, Murong Qianqian was someone who could not stay idle. Even in the clan, other than her father and brother, everyone else would be somewhat afraid of her when they saw her. However, after returning to the clan this time, Murong Qianqian suddenly seemed to have changed into a different person. This caused her father and brother to involuntarily feel worried. This kind of situation continued for over a couple of months. In the end, Murong Qianqian, who did not like to train, for some unknown reason, shut herself into the training room specially provided by the clan. She stayed there for a couple of years. Not long ago, Murong Qianqian finally exited from her long seclusion. Soon after, however, before her brother and father could relax, this girl had disappeared in the blink of an eye. This time, Even the clan elders were unable to discover any traces of the latter's disappearance. Only now did her fourth uncle, Murong Hao, inform the father and son about Xiao Yan's matter. At the same time that the two of them were shocked, they hurriedly dispatched people to search for Murong Qianqian. Murong Xian's group was here to search for Murong Qianqian. Even their trip to the ancient tomb this time around, other than searching for Xiao Yan, was also to search for Murong Qianqian. However, they only realized that the girl did not appear to be here when they arrived. In this way, Xiao Yan had also become their target. Unfortunately, they had truly underestimated Xiao Yan's strength. Due to their carelessness, they had been so easily dealt with by Xiao Yan. If it was not for the fact that both parties had no intention to kill, Murong Xian's group would have already turned into a pile of corpses. After hearing this news, Xiao Yan left the hall with a heart full of melancholy. He decided to look for Murong Qianqian after this trip to the ancient tomb. However, before that, he still needed to find esteemed Tianju's soul source energy and the other scroll of the origin returning technique. Very quickly, Xiao Yan once again arrived in front of the 5 forked roads. Without any hesitation, Xiao Yan directly charged into the middle of the street. Whether or not he could find those two things would depend on this time. At the same time, in another hall, many figures were standing in a disorderly manner. They glanced at each other vigilantly, and no one dared to act rashly. In the center of the crowd, a huge ball of energy was floating slowly. When everyone looked at this ball of energy, their eyes were filled with greed. It seems that there is nothing else in this hall. This Do Qi inheritance should be the precious treasure left behind by Tianju. Hee, if we can devour and refine the Do Qi inheritance of an origin transformation expert, won't we be able to create a supreme expert out of thin air? Humph, how ignorant. What origin transformation expert? Esteemed Tianju was a true returnance expert when he was at the peak of his cultivation. It was only after reaching returnance that he chose to seclude himself. After that, he completely vanished from the continent. You bunch of unambitious people actually believed that he was an origin transformation expert. How foolish. Although Chen Zhan's words were filled with disdain, they did not cause any commotion when they reached the ears of the surrounding people. Instead, a wave of shock swept through the crowd. Returnance. Did the esteemed Tianju actually become a returnance expert in the past? Voices that were filled with shock swiftly spread throughout the large hall. Chen Zhan's words caused the originally fiery hot gazes of these people to become even hotter at this moment. The flame of greed in their hearts became even more intense. Numerous gazes were filled with an endless longing when they looked at the Do Qi inheritance in the square. If they could obtain the Do Qi inheritance of a returnance expert and successfully devour and refine it, would that not mean that the Western region would have a very high chance of gaining another origin transformation expert in the near future by borrowing the power of the Do Qi inheritance? They would become one of the candidates. Swish. Under the urging of one's greedy heart, there would always be someone who would be unable to resist and act first. As expected, a moment later, a yellow-robed old man suddenly charged out from a certain spot in the crowd. He used a lightning-like speed to fly toward the Do Qi inheritance. However, the hunter would shoot the bird that took the lead. The appearance of the old man had caused him to instantly become the target of everyone present. In the blink of an eye, a 7-star Dodi had been killed by the combined attacks of everyone present. At this moment, the battle in the hall began. Boom! Boom! Intense explosions continuously resounded within the hall as human figures flew about. From time to time, experts would be forcefully sent flying from the crowd. There were even some who were attacked by many people at the same time and turned into a bloody mist in the blink of an eye. Bright red blood quickly covered the floor of the hall. In the end, other than the few factions and the people from the 3 great sects, there were only a few powerful individual cultivators left in this large hall. They were still unwilling to stay in this place. Among them, the ones who had retained the most strength were naturally the Divine Refining Sect and the Battle Martial Sect. As for Yi Luotian's side, the people behind him had scattered during the battle. The robes that covered their bodies had already fallen to the ground. From the looks of it, it was extremely likely that they had died in the battle earlier. Humph, how is it? Do you still plan on fighting with us? At this moment, Chen Zhen and Wu Jiqian stood side by side. The two of them did not attack each other because there was only one Do Qi inheritance present. Instead, they worked together with great teamwork to keep the others at bay. Although the Do Qi inheritance appeared extremely powerful, they could still tell that the power within the inheritance was not as great as they had imagined it to be. Just like what they had said before, Tianju was a returnance expert. His cultivation could be said to be the greatest in the history of the Western region, yet the power within the Doqi inheritance was nowhere near the level they had hoped for. When they thought of the 5 paths from before, the 2 sect leaders immediately understood that it was extremely likely that there was more than one Doqi inheritance. In order to maximize their benefits, working together had become an extremely good choice for them. When the remaining factions heard Chen Zhan's words, the greed in their hearts immediately diminished by more than half. In terms of individual strength, they might be able to barely match up to the 2 people in front of them. However, if they were to join forces, they would no longer have any hope. As for working together like Chen Zhan and Wu Jiqian, it was even more impossible for the organizations present to do so. There was a difference in strength between them to a certain extent. They did not trust each other in the first place, so the outcome of working together was obvious. As a result, the organizations chose to retreat in the end rather than wasting their efforts. Chen Zhan and Wu Jiqian exchanged glances with each other as they watched the few factions gradually withdraw. A satisfied smile surfaced on the corner of their mouths. Immediately, they turned their eyes and looked at the Doqi inheritance behind them. Humph, sect leader Wu, as long as we practice, I believe that there are not many organizations in this ancient tomb that can rival us. Chen Zhan smiled with a golden light in his eyes. His words were filled with arrogance. As a 9-star Do-D and a Class 4 formation master, his strength was enough to allow him to stand at the top among experts of the same level. Wu Jiqian's forte was his physical strength. With the 2 of them working together, one attacking and the other defending, they were undoubtedly the best combination. Chen Zhan, I advise you not to be too careless. The background of Qin Yun in this group is frighteningly strong. Even you and I cannot easily become enemies with him. Wu Jiqian wore a solemn expression as he shook his head when he heard Chen Zhan's words. Although he appeared to be well-developed, he was definitely not a simple-minded person. Anyone who dared to underestimate him would likely have to pay a hefty price. So what if his father is at the origin transformation stage? As long as we obtain these Doqi inheritances, we will also be able to advance to the origin transformation stage. At that time, the Western region will no longer be a place where his Qin wasteland Maze Valley can do whatever he wants. Chen Zhan laughed coldly. His smile appeared extremely ferocious. Even Wu Jiqian could not help but feel a chill in his heart. Additionally, we have no way of dealing with the most troublesome person. The person Wu Jiqian was referring to was naturally Xiao Yan. With the lightning punishment oath as a check, they were not allowed to attack Xiao Yan as long as they were within the ancient tomb. Otherwise, they would definitely be punished by the lightning punishment oath. That kind of power was something that even they would feel terrified of. As long as they were within the ancient tomb, it would feel as if there was a thorn above their heads at all times, watching their every move. This caused them to feel extremely uncomfortable. Once we leave this place, we will definitely make him pay the price in blood. Chen Zhan cursed with a dark and cold expression. However, a moment later, a ghost-like figure suddenly appeared behind the 2 of them. Leave. In my opinion, this place is rather suitable to be your tomb. So, stay here. When the figure appeared, a hoarse voice that was as cold as the water of hell suddenly sounded beside the 2 of them. At almost the same time, the disciples around the 2 of them suddenly let out miserable cries. Soon after, the sound of bodies falling to the ground could be heard. In the blink of an eye, the 20 people from the 2 sects had all been killed. A moment later, when Chen Zhan and Wu Jiqian hurriedly regained their senses and retreated, they saw with disbelief that the figure that had appeared behind them was actually Yiluo Tian. Chapter 941. Grug. While Chen Zhan and Wu Ji were exclaiming, Yiluo's 5 fingers were inserted into their chests with a grug sound. A frightening strength immediately spread. Ah! Accompanied by a chi-chi sound, the injured areas on their chests were swiftly corroded at a speed that was visible to the eye under the extremely swollen red and distorted expressions of the 2 of them. Within a couple of breaths, a large patch of flesh on their chests had been forcefully corroded, revealing the dense white bones, scarlet flesh and internal organs underneath. Under the corrosion of that corrosive strength, one could clearly see that even the white bones, which had been exposed to the air, had changed color. Even the hardest bones in a human body appeared to have melted, becoming viscous. In an instant, the 2 9-star Do-D had already turned into seriously injured bodies. The 2 of them continued to stagger backwards. Finally, they emitted a plop sound as they collapsed onto the ground. Within a short moment, The physical strength of the two of them seemed to have been completely exhausted. They used their do chi to forcefully endure the intense pain that was being transmitted from their bodies while throwing their incomparably terrified eyes at the person who was approaching them step by step, Yi Luotian. At this moment, regardless of how stupid they were, they should have been able to guess that the other party clearly had designs on them. However, they had been kept in the dark by the person in front of them from the beginning until the end. You. Just when did you? Your cultivation is not that of an 8-star do-di. The two of them stared at Yi Luotian in front of them with great horror. The fear in their hearts could not be described with words. They had never expected that the person whom they usually looked down upon the most would actually control their life and death today. Moreover, the strength that they were so proud of was completely worthless in the eyes of the latter. Have the both of you finally discovered it? Unfortunately, it is already too late. The old me had already successfully broken through to the 9-star do-di class a couple of years ago. It is only because I have been waiting for this moment today that I have kept quiet. Originally, I thought that I would be able to kill the three of you with my own hands today. However, I did not expect that useless Jian Ming was unable to even block one punch from Xiao Yan. How useless! Yi Luotian's face was filled with ridicule. The disdain in his words was not hidden at all. Soon after, numerous human figures flew over from behind him. Their expressions were wooden as they stood behind Yi Luotian. Only at this moment did Chen Zhan and Wu Jiqian raise their heads to take a look. Only then did they discover that the dozen-plus people standing behind Yi Luotian had frighteningly powerful cultivations. These people were all 9-star do-di. Moreover, Chen Zhan and Wu Jiqian more or less knew the faces of these people. Lin Nan. You are the blood-scale hand Lin Nan? Why are you in his team? While Wu Jiqian's eyes were jumping around, he suddenly discovered a familiar-looking person in the group behind Yi Luotian. This Lin Nan that he had mentioned was also a 9-star do-di. The latter's strength was not inferior to Wu Jiqian at his peak. In the past, the two of them could be considered both enemies and friends. They often chatted and laughed with each other. However, this Lin Nan was currently standing behind Yi Luotian like a servant. This really caused Wu Jiqian to feel extremely shocked. Lin Nan lowered his head in the face of Wu Jiqian's question. In the past, he had some friendly relations with Wu Jiqian. Now that the relationship between the two of them had turned into such a state, it was likely that no one was willing to see it. What is going on? What is going on with all of you? All of you are renowned experts within the Western region. Why are all of you actually willing to stand behind him? Wu Jiqian was immediately furious when he saw these people lower their heads. A 9-star do-di would actually reveal such a lowly slave-like appearance. This was really something that he could not imagine. Oh, Lin Nan, it seems that you and sect leader Wu are old acquaintances? At this moment, Yi Luotian turned his gaze towards Lin Nan in the crowd behind him. His face carried a smile. However, this smile caused one's heart to palpitate when one looked at it. Lin Nan did not move, hoping to avoid Yi Luotian's question. Haha, it is fine if you do not wish to speak. Now I will give you a mission. Yi Luotian smiled ferociously. His bloodthirsty eyes stared at Lin Nan as he slowly said, "Pluck out Wu Jiqian's heart." Yes. Lin Nan's body trembled uncontrollably in an instant. Even his breathing involuntarily paused. His entire heart felt as though it had been struck by lightning. He had never imagined that Yi Luotian would be so vicious as to ask him to pluck out Wu Jiqian's heart. Such an action was really worse than a beast. Why, are you planning to disobey my orders? Yi Luotian's eyes immediately narrowed when he saw that Lin Nan did not move. A cold glint flashed deep within his eyes. Threads of killing intent swiftly gathered. 1, 2, 3. Until 10 breaths later. Ah! Suddenly, the trembling Lin Nan let out a miserable shriek. His entire body instantly fell to the ground. His miserable shriek caused everyone's eardrums to explode. His entire body uncontrollably curled up and twitched violently. Fresh blood flowed out from all 7 of his orifices. His aura also rapidly declined. A short moment later, he had completely lost his aura and turned into a corpse. Those 9-star do-di, who had witnessed everything from the beginning, did not have the slightest intention of stepping forward. Perhaps it was because they had seen a similar situation before and did not dare to step forward in order to protect their own lives. Everyone present only felt a deep fear in their hearts toward Yi Luotian. No one knew just how frightening this seemingly amiable old man was. Do all of you want to give it a try? Yi Luotian's earlier action was to kill the chicken to warn the monkey. Losing a 9-star Do was nothing to him. The most important thing was that he currently possessed an even greater fighting strength. As long as he was able to control these people better, he would not need to be afraid that they would not listen to him. From the looks of the current situation, his earlier action had undoubtedly obtained an extremely great result. Damn it, Yi Luotian, you are vicious and merciless. You will definitely not have a good ending. Chen Zhan clenched his teeth tightly as he cursed with an unwilling face. Humph, the same goes for you. However, all of you are far too foolish in comparison. You are destined to be unable to become the rulers of this world. The law of this world is that the strong prey on the weak. I am merely following the law and becoming a strong person. This is a necessity. The expression on Yi Luotian's face became increasingly wild and savage as he spoke. All of you are merely pawns in the exchange of the strong. You are not worth mentioning. 2 rays of light suddenly shot out the instant his words sounded. They immediately penetrated the brows of the 2 men. At the same time, the Do Qi that had just gathered within their bodies instantly scattered. Humph, trying to self-destruct in front of me. You are really seeking death. Yi Luotian snorted coldly with disdain. His eyes immediately turned and landed on the Do Qi inheritance in front of him. The corner of his mouth was lifted into a greedy smile. At the same time, he once again spoke in an icy tone. Kill them all. Leave no one alive. Immediately, the 10+ 9-star Do behind him once again moved. Yi Luotian had also sent people to seal the stone door of the large hall when he had attacked earlier. Hence, none of the factions present had managed to escape. At this moment, with the combined attack of these 10+ 9-star Do, only Yi Luotian's group remained in the large hall in a short moment. Yi Luotian kept the Do Qi inheritance and turned his head around. His eyes once again landed on the corpses that littered the ground. With so many corpses, the remnant soul strength was not a weak force. Yi Luotian smiled ferociously. He waved his large sleeve and a strange suction force immediately spread outwards. Soon after, the remaining spiritual essence strength on the corpses within the large hall was completely absorbed into his bag. At the same time, Xiao Yan on the other side had also arrived in front of another large hall. Chapter 942. At this moment, quite a number of people had already gathered in front of the tightly shut heavy stone door. These people were extremely vexed at the fact that this stone door could not be opened. They did not expect that even though they had arrived at the deepest part of the ancient tomb, they would actually need the 3 famous Do skills of Tianju to open the stone door. Yet, none of the people present possessed them. This resulted in most of the experts leaving this place to search for other ancient tombs with the exception of a small group of people who remained. At the same time, they also hoped to be able to meet up with Chen Zhen's group. However, their hopes were destined to be dashed. It was also at this moment that the black-robed Xiao Yan suddenly arrived. Numerous gazes in front of the stone door immediately looked at the black-robed human figure who was gradually approaching. Soon after, joy surged within everyone's eyes. Xiao Yan. It is Xiao Yan who has arrived. This time, the stone door can be opened. He, even if the stone door is opened, will you be able to snatch it? Xiao Yan can even finish off an 8-star Do with one punch. Xiao Yan's appearance not only gave these people a pleasant surprise, but also attracted many fearful gazes. Xiao Yan also saw Qin Yun's group from among the crowd. At the same time, the 2 black-robed people at a certain spot in the crowd also noticed Xiao Yan's arrival. The corner of the mouth under the black robe revealed a playful smile. 2 pairs of eyes quietly looked at each other, but they did not say anything. Xiao Yan immediately understood in his heart when he saw the experts gathered here and the stone door that had yet to be opened. From the looks of it, Chen Zhen and Wu Jiqian had yet to arrive. In other words, no one had touched the things within this large hall. This was undoubtedly good news for Xiao Yan, who was currently in the middle of this matter. After arriving in front of the crowd, Qin Yun's group also noticed the former's arrival. Immediately, a dense chill surged within their eyes. However, they also knew that now was not the time to attack Xiao Yan. Hence, they withdrew their gazes with hatred. Standing at the front of the crowd, Xiao Yan's footsteps paused in front of the stone door. The crowd behind him gradually surrounded him. Xiao Yan could wait, but they could not wait to enter the stone door and investigate. The corner of Xiao Yan's eyes swept over those people behind him. Immediately, his feet moved and the sky extinction steps was instantly unleashed. A flowing wind whistled past the stone door. Soon after, the stone door slowly opened with a loud bang. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Soon after, a wave of flashing human figures rushing through the wind sounded beside Xiao Yan's ear. Numerous human figures continued to charge out from all around Xiao Yan's body. They formed a black mass. This scene appeared as shocking as a swarm of locusts sweeping across the ground. However, Xiao Yan was unconcerned about this. The moment the stone door opened, Xiao Yan's spiritual strength surged in and swiftly scanned the interior of this large hall. Finally, Xiao Yan involuntarily frowned. After some investigation, he was still unable to find the so-called spiritual essence strength. Could it be that Tianju did not leave behind any spiritual essence strength? Since this was the case, why did Tianying's words back then come true in this place? Xiao Yan's heart was filled with dissatisfaction. Other than the Dou Qi inheritance, the interior of this large hall was no different from the previous large hall. He was unable to detect the aura of the spiritual essence, much less the so-called return to source skill. Could it be that there was nothing here other than the Dou Qi inheritance? Damn it. Just where are those two things? Xiao Yan's body stopped moving. His heart was filled with disappointment. From the looks of it now, it was likely that only the last large hall was left for him to try his luck. Buzz. However, just as Xiao Yan was about to turn around, Xiao Xian's remnant spirit in the storage ring suddenly moved once again. This time around, even the half-remnant return to source skill in the storage ring was buzzing. Ha! Xiao Yan's heart suddenly jumped when he realized this. His body, which was just about to turn around, suddenly paused. He lifted his gaze and his eyes, which were filled with flames, instantly looked at the stone door in front of him. More accurately speaking, he was looking at the large hall behind the stone door that countless experts were anxiously waiting for. Xiao Yan's body moved. He did not hesitate even a little as he directly charged into the large hole in front of him. His eyes were searing hot as they swept all around him. At this moment, the large hall was in complete chaos. All the experts who had entered the large hall had discovered that there was nothing in the hall other than the Dou Qi inheritance in the middle. Was this not clearly telling them that only the strongest person among them would be able to obtain the Dou Qi inheritance? The process of selecting the strongest person was naturally the price of blood and life. The chaos in the hall had far exceeded Xiao Yan's expectations. At this moment, everyone was repeatedly attacking each other in order to obtain the Dou Qi inheritance. Their greed caused their attacks to be even more ruthless than usual. In order to achieve their goal, they would stop at nothing. These people would definitely not be stingy with any method that could reduce the obstacles in their way. Very quickly, quite a number of elite Dou Di in the hall had lost their lives because of this. At this moment, Xiao Yan was raising his eyes and looking all around him. He spread out his spiritual strength and carefully investigated every inch of the large hall. Very quickly, a scene that was slightly different from the one in the large hall earlier appeared in Xiao Yan's eyes. That is. Xiao Yan's gaze directly passed through the crowd and looked at the deepest part of the large hall. There was also an enormous stone chair that appeared to be carved from stone at that spot. However, the difference between this stone chair and the earlier one was that there was actually a lively old man carved on this stone chair. The old man was sitting upright. Both of his hands were placed on the armrests on both sides of the stone chair. Although he was a stone sculpture, his pair of eyes appeared to be alive. They carried a disdainful feeling as they looked down on everyone present. At a glance, it was as though an adult was watching a group of children playing. Don't tell me. Xiao Yan's eyes shrunk slightly. He could sense a thread of life from those eyes. In other words, the reason why the spiritual origin strength did not exist in this large hall was not because it did not exist. Instead, it was because someone had purposely sealed it within this stone statue. There was no need to think too much about the person who had sealed the spiritual origin strength. It was naturally Tianju. I really did not expect that Tianju would actually seal the spiritual origin strength within the stone statue. An ordinary person who enters the ancient tomb would basically first rush for the treasures within the ancient tomb. Why would they care about these things? Is this why you did this? Ignoring the surrounding people, Xiao Yan's gaze focused on the eyes of the stone statue as he muttered to himself. Suddenly, Xiao Yan was startled. He seemed to have felt that the eyes of the stone statue were actually staring at him. Chapter 943. Bang! Xiao Yan waved his fist in front of the stone door. A punch sent a person flying in front of him. He did not even look as his body moved and swiftly flew toward the stone statue. Being in this chaotic crowd, even with Xiao Yan's agility and speed, he was unable to dodge all the human figures or attacks. Hence, in the face of those human figures or those skills that shot over from an unknown direction, Xiao Yan could only wave his fist and break them apart. Bang, 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 bang! The muffled sound of collisions continued to sound. The chaotic crowd caused Xiao Yan's advancing speed to slow down. At the same time, it caused his heart to feel a little more irritation. Unknowingly, the strength of his attacks had naturally become a little more violent. This black-robed skinny figure appeared just like a killing god within the crowd at this moment. No matter what kind of attack or what kind of collision it was, it would be mercilessly sent flying within a meter of his body. Such a straightforward and violent action caused some of the people present to reveal frightened faces. Even the facial muscles of a 9-star Do Di involuntarily twitched. What is this fellow planning to do? At a certain spot in the crowd, Qin Yun's gaze was attracted by Xiao Yan's violent action. His heart involuntarily felt shocked when he saw that the latter was actually able to erupt with such a frightening strength. Soon after, Qin Yun noticed that the direction Xiao Yan was heading in seemed to be the Do Qi inheritance. Is he planning to fight for the Do Qi inheritance? Humph, the three of you stop him. You must not allow him to take another step forward. Qin Yun immediately emitted an explosive cry when he noticed this. He ordered Yan He and the other two who were guarding him. But young master, what about you? It is enough to have this fellow by my side. All of you quickly go and stop him. I must obtain the Do Qi inheritance before he does. Qin Yun's expression was firm as he ordered the three of them. Upon seeing this, the three of them looked at each other before looking at the black-robed man beside Qin Yun. Only then did they respond with a yes. Turning around, they simultaneously looked towards Xiao Yan. With a leap, they charged towards him. At this moment, Xiao Yan's continuous violent attacks caused the surrounding experts to feel fear towards Xiao Yan. This time, there was no need for Xiao Yan to personally take action. Those experts who saw themselves approaching Xiao Yan hurriedly retreated. Some scheming and cunning fellows had even purposely forced the opponents in front of them to Xiao Yan's side. After those fellows discovered the intentions of their opponents, they would rather be injured by the other party than be willing to touch Xiao Yan even a little. At this moment, Xiao Yan was just like a dangerous bomb in the crowd. Anyone who touched him would either die or be injured. Everyone's hearts trembled in fear of the latter. Finally, Xiao Yan was about to approach the Do Qi inheritance. However, no one present knew that the latter's attention was not on the Do Qi inheritance. Moreover, Xiao Yan did not have much interest in this so-called Do Qi inheritance. Unfortunately, Xiao Yan did not think this way. However, it did not mean that others did not think this way. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Following the appearance of three rushing wind sounds, three human figures suddenly flashed and appeared beside Xiao Yan. Three pairs of eyes instantly landed on Xiao Yan's body. Their killing intent was sharp and fierce. Xiao Yan's eyes indifferently glanced at the three people beside him. He could not help but frown. He did not have the intention to fight for the Do Qi inheritance. It was unexpected that they would continue to pester him. Xiao Yan, you managed to escape from the hands of the three of us brothers half a year ago. This time around, however, it will not happen again. Yan He waved his arm. A powerful Do Qi energy immediately surged out from his body with a frightening momentum. At the same time, the other two 9-star Do Di also released the enormous Do Qi energy within their bodies. Moreover, they swiftly agglomerated into a solid Do Qi armor on the surface of their bodies, protecting the two of them. After witnessing the great strength that Xiao Yan had displayed earlier, even someone as strong as them had no choice but to be cautious when facing Xiao Yan. Otherwise, if they were careless, it was extremely likely that they would end up like their predecessors. Seeing the three of them revealing such a stance, Xiao Yan's heart sank slightly. He thought in his heart, could it be that they have discovered something unusual about the stone statue? However, Xiao Yan quickly dispelled this thought. This was because only at this moment did he realize that the Do Qi inheritance was right in front of him. From the looks of it, Qin Yun had likely thought that he wanted to fight for the Do Qi inheritance. Therefore, he had sent people to obstruct him. However, all of this was no longer important to Xiao Yan. After the incident half a year ago, The relationship between him and Qin Yun had already reached an irreconcilable state. Even if Qin Yun had sent people to deal with him, it was something that could not be questioned. Moreover, even if Qin Yun did not come to find trouble with Xiao Yan today, Xiao Yan would still come to settle the score with him in the future. Without the slightest hesitation, Xiao Yan flicked his finger. The Northern King's figure immediately appeared beside him. Its purple-gold body and overbearing killing aura caused the hearts of everyone present to tremble the moment the Northern King appeared. Its owner's strength was frightening. Even this puppet was as frightening as a demon. Currently, the Northern King had absorbed quite a lot of the lightning strength within its body after the earlier battle. Hence, its strength had successfully risen once again. It had already reached the level of an advanced 9-star Do D. By relying on its puppet body, the fighting strength of the Northern King could definitely be considered one of the top experts among those of the same level. With such strength, it was not difficult for it to deal with 2 9-star Do D at the same time. Hence, the only person Xiao Yan needed to face at this moment was Yan He alone. Very quickly, the 2 9-star Do D by the side had already begun to fight with the Northern King. It was just as Xiao Yan had expected. The Northern King did not fall into a disadvantageous position despite fighting against 2 alone. With the help of the lightning strength on the surface of its body, its fighting strength was so great that it could be evenly matched with a 2 9-star Do D. Xiao Yan's heart naturally relaxed when he saw this scene. After which, he focused his attention and returned it to Yan He in front of him. At this moment, the latter had clearly just recovered. The corner of his eyes twitched as he turned his head. His hateful gaze immediately landed on Xiao Yan as he viciously scolded. "Humph, so what if your puppet can block the 2 of them? The old me is also a 9-star Do D. I am not someone that second-rate trash like Jian Ming can compare with. I alone am more than enough to deal with you." "Cuckoo, that's right. I alone am more than enough to deal with you." Xiao Yan coldly laughed. He gently flipped his hand under his sleeve and 3 black steel needles appeared in his hand. Calm. Wonderful Book House. Chapter 944. What shameless boasting. Just who is the one with more than enough to spare? Let's fight. An explosive cry sounded. Soon after, Yan He's body shook. Powerful Do Qi energy immediately spluttered out from within his body. With a wave of his large sleeve, it transformed into numerous Do Qi pillars that violently cut toward Xiao Yan's head. The sharp Do Qi had already arrived in front of Xiao Yan in the blink of an eye. However, the latter was not the least bit afraid. Only when the couple of Do Qi pillars were in front of him did he turn his head slightly and easily dodge them. Soon after, however, Yan He's body suddenly pressed forward. His palm was close to Xiao Yan's chest as it violently cut across. The powerful Do Qi actually forcefully tore apart the empty space. However, the result was that it did not leave even the slightest imprint on Xiao Yan's body. What? Yan He's heart was suddenly greatly shocked. This was naturally not because he had intentionally gone easy on Xiao Yan. Instead, it was because the palm that he had clearly seen earlier had approached Xiao Yan's body. Only then did he realize with shock that the latter's body had unknowingly used an ingenious angle to perfectly dodge his attack. How is this possible? Yan He's heart was greatly shaken. The latter was ultimately merely a 6-star Do D. However, how was it possible for his speed and strength to be raised to such a frightening level at the same time? This was completely impossible. Cuckoo, you are really foolish to attempt a sneak attack while being covered by a rank 4 spiritual strength. Xiao Yan coldly laughed. His body suddenly twisted and directly used half of his body to heavily collide with Yan He, who had brushed past him. Although this attack of Xiao Yan's was heavy, Yan He was after all a 9-star Do D. His body swiftly withdrew after feeling the pain from this attack. The Do Qi within his body churned and forcefully removed the enormous force on his body. Even though this was the case, it still caused the blood within his body to churn. His face involuntarily turned slightly pale. Brat, what a brute force. However, you can forget about obtaining the Do Qi inheritance with just this. Yan He coldly snorted. His body moved and once again pounced toward Xiao Yan. However, compared to before, he was a little more cautious this time around. His mission was only to delay Xiao Yan. As long as Qin Yun obtained the Do Qi inheritance, they could immediately turn around and withdraw. The debt between them and Xiao Yan could only be settled in the future. Xiao Yan's eyebrows involuntarily twitched when he heard Yan He glanced at the Do Qi inheritance. Indeed, Qin Yun swiftly approached to the Do Qi inheritance under the protection of the black-robed person. If no one stopped him, it was likely that the Do Qi inheritance, the Do Qi inheritance. Humph. Xiao Yan let out a cold snort in his heart when he saw this scene. Originally, he did not intend to fight for this Do Qi inheritance. However, this Qin Yun had actually taken the initiative to find trouble with him. This caused Xiao Yan's heart to feel furious. All right. Since you want me to fight, I will fight with you. With a cold snort, Xiao Yan's gaze suddenly turned and once again returned to Yan He in front of him. His eyes were indifferent. An ice-cold killing intent was not hidden as it leaked out, causing one's heart to feel a chill. Yan He felt a chill run down his spine when he came into contact with Xiao Yan's gaze. For some unknown reason, the Xiao Yan in front of him actually caused him to feel a trace of fear. Ha! With an explosive cry, Yan He's body moved first, intending to gain the initiative by striking first. However, this time around, Xiao Yan did not plan to give him any more chances. He raised his right hand to his chest and threw it into the air. 3 black-colored steel needles appeared in front of him. Soon after, Xiao Yan flicked his finger and the 3 steel needles shot toward Yan He in an orderly fashion. Seeing the 3 steel needles flying over, Yan He did not dare to be careless in his heart. He tilted his body slightly and easily dodged one of the needles. As for the remaining 2 needles, Yan He also shot out 2 Do Qi pillars and violently collided with them. However, just as Yan He thought that he had given up in this manner, he suddenly saw that the 2 Do Qi pillars that he had shot out were actually easily penetrated by the 2 steel needles. Moreover, the power of the needles was not reduced in the slightest as they shot explosively toward him. They were already in front of him and there was no way to dodge. Stop. With a low cry, Yan He extended both of his hands. Thick Do Qi swiftly covered his palms as he grabbed at the 2 steel needles. Qi. However, just as Yan He's palms grabbed the 2 steel needles, he was shocked to discover that the 2 steel needles were as slippery as loaches. He was unable to grab them. Damn it! At the same time as his expression changed drastically, Yan He hurriedly controlled the Do Qi in his body and repeatedly poured it into the Do Qi armor in front of his chest. Ding ding! Following the 2 crisp sounds, Yan He's heart finally relaxed. He thought that the 2 steel needles had been blocked by the Do Qi armor. However, in the next moment, his entire face suddenly became distorted. His entire body was like it was convulsing. His eyes immediately turned scarlet red and the life within his pupils also swiftly disappeared. Before he died, Yan He lowered his head to take a look. He only saw that there were 2 huge holes in his chest that filled his entire chest. Under the effect of the Great Way of the Void, the area where the steel needles entered, the bones and internal organs were completely swallowed. It was as though his body had suddenly been split apart. Just think about it. How could a person without internal organs survive? As the life force disappeared, Yan He's body also fell down uncontrollably. After which, he heavily smashed into the corpses on the floor of the large hole. After swiftly killing Yan He, Xiao Yan did not hesitate too much. He extended his hand and beckoned. The steel needle that flew out was swiftly withdrawn. As for the one that shot into Yan He's body, it automatically disappeared. It was likely that it would require a period of time before it could reform. However, to the current Xiao Yan, this did not have much of an impact. Even without 2 needles, he still had 8 in his hand. Using 2 steel needles in exchange for the life of a 9-star Do-D, this meant that without using any of his methods, he could kill another 4 9-star Do-D with just these 8 steel needles. This kind of strength was sufficient for him to challenge any faction in this ancient tomb. Of course, at this moment, Xiao Yan was not concerned about challenging any faction. Instead, he was concerned about Tianju's soul source strength and the returning origin skill. Perhaps at this moment, he could add one more. Do Qi inheritance. Turning his gaze, Xiao Yan looked at the spot where the Do Qi inheritance was located. As expected, Qin Yun had already arrived in front of it and was about to keep it into his storage ring. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yan's expression immediately turned cold. At such a distance, he was unable to instantly stop him. In that case, he could only... Swoosh! With a flick of his finger, the steel needle that had landed in his hand immediately shot forward. It passed through the crowd in front of him and headed straight for Qin Yun. However, just as the steel needle arrived in front of Qin Yun, the black-robed person beside him suddenly acted. He sent the steel needle flying with a palm from the side. It pierced into the body of a doe not far away. Immediately, a heart-wrenching roar was stirred within the large hole. Ha! Xiao Yan's expression sank. He focused his eyes and looked over. That black-robed person also revealed a pair of dark and cold eyes under the cover of the black robe. They looked at each other from a distance. At the same time, Qin Yun grabbed the Doqi inheritance that was the size of a wash basin in front of him. Swoosh! However, at the next moment, an unusual change occurred. Mobile version update website. Chapter 945. In front of the Doqi inheritance within the large hall, Qin Yun was about to store the Doqi inheritance in front of him into his storage ring when a powerful suction force suddenly surged over from a certain spot in the large hall. It forcefully pulled the Doqi inheritance that was close at hand. The Doqi inheritance flew over the crowd. Under the numerous fiery hot gazes, it was finally suspended in front of a black-robed person. After which, it was stored into his storage ring in front of the stunned gazes of everyone present. At this moment, the entire place was silent. Numerous dull gazes looked at the black-robed person who had stored the Doqi inheritance into his storage ring. This was especially so for the current Qin Yun. The expression on his face was one of shock. A duck that was about to reach one's mouth had flown away just like that. It was likely that no one would be able to endure such a blow. That mysterious black-robed person by his side also turned his gaze to the opposite side. A pair of dark and cold eyes under the black robe stared at that person like a poisonous snake. Killing intent was present in his eyes. On the other side, Xiao Yan was also stunned because of this sudden scene. His gaze followed the crowd and looked over. Only then did he realize that another mysterious black-robed person had appeared in his sight. Sweeping his gaze, Xiao Yan quickly discovered that there were actually two people on the other side. The two of them were wearing black robes. At the same time that he could not see their faces clearly, the thing that caused Xiao Yan to be even more shocked was that even with his spiritual strength, he was actually unable to see through the other party's cultivation. In this way, there were currently two factions in this large hall that could pose a threat to him. This involuntarily caused Xiao Yan to quietly become cautious. Faced with this kind of opponent whose cultivation he could not even predict, he really did not dare to be the slightest bit careless. While Xiao Yan was observing the two black-robed people, the latter also seemed to be observing the change in Xiao Yan's expression. Immediately, the corner of one of their mouths under the black robe was lifted into a mocking smile. "Who are you people? You actually dare to snatch this young master's Doqi inheritance?" Qin Yun, who had recovered, could be said to be extremely furious. Relying on the protection of this person beside him, he did not avoid the evil thief who had snatched his Doqi inheritance. However, she did not know that even this person, who was currently guarding by her side, was extremely afraid of the other two black-robed people in his heart. This was because he was just like Xiao Yan and was unable to see through the strength of these two people. The two black-robed people were indifferent to Qin Yun's furious cry. It was as though they had completely ignored him. Bastard! Yan He Yan Lai attacked together. Take back what belongs to me. Being ignored by the two of them, the anger in Qin Yun's heart grew even stronger. He subconsciously called out the names of the three people and waited for the three of them to act and snatch back the Doqi inheritance. However, he only recovered after a few breaths. Yan He and the other two had already gone to intercept Xiao Yan. How could they appear beside him at this moment? However, Yan Hua and Yan Lai, who had been summoned by Qin Yun, quickly rushed to Qin Yun's side. Their bodies were covered with wounds of various sizes. Threads of fresh blood flowed unceasingly and the qi and blood in their bodies churned intensely. However, Yan He's disappearance caused the two brothers to feel a deep uneasiness. Their gazes suddenly turned and the two of them immediately discovered that Yan He, who should have been fighting with Xiao Yan, was nowhere to be seen at this moment. After waiting for a while, the hearts of the two suddenly sank. They simultaneously turned their gazes toward Xiao Yan. "Xiao Yan, where is Yan He?" The faces of the two brothers were ferocious. They ignored the churning qi in their bodies and shook their bodies. Doqi immediately surged out. "Dead." Xiao Yan indifferently said these two words. He did not think that there was a need to hide anything from these two. Since he had killed them, they could not do anything to him. "You are courting death." Hearing the news that they did not want to hear the most, Yan Hua and Yan Lai were unable to suppress their emotions. They ignored Qin Yun's orders and shot forward, charging toward Xiao Yan. You actually dared to kill Yan He. We want you dead. Desolation finger. Xiao Yan let out a low cry in his heart. His 10 fingers moved together and numerous complicated seals were swiftly formed. In the blink of an eye, a huge energy finger was agglomerated above his head. At the same time, the Northern King, who had returned to Qin Yun's side, also charged toward one of the two, Yan Hua. At this moment, Yan Hua and Yan Lai had similarly used all their strength in their attacks in order to avenge Yan He. When they attacked together, their might was especially shocking. The elite Do Di along the way hurriedly retreated to the side, afraid that they would be affected by the battle that was about to follow. Bang! Soon after, Xiao Yan and the Northern King collided with the two of them. Following an earth-shaking explosion, Xiao Yan and the Northern King quietly withdrew. The Desolation Finger also disappeared. On the opposite side, Yan Hua and Yan Lai were also forced back by the two of them. In this collision, both parties were evenly matched. Xiao Yan died. Enough! I will tell you to come back now. Just as Yan Hua and Yan Lai's hearts were filled with fury and were about to step forward once again, Qin Yun's cry was once again transmitted over. This time around, anyone could hear the anger contained within his words. Their bodies involuntarily trembled intensely as two pairs of eyes stared intently at Xiao Yan. Their eyes, which seemed to want to devour people, were directly ignored by Xiao Yan. This caused the hatred in the hearts of the two of them to grow even deeper. However, Qin Yun continued to angrily reprimand them over and over again. The emotions of the two of them swayed left and right. It was a long while later before the two of them finally lowered their heads unwillingly and returned to Qin Yun's side with hearts filled with regret. Humph, trash. You actually dare to disobey my orders. Once this trip to the old tomb is over, I will definitely teach you a lesson. Qin Yun viciously glared at the two of them. Immediately, his gaze returned to the two black-robed human figures not far away. The muscles on the corner of his eyes twitched. He was just about to open his mouth when the black-robed person beside him stopped him. He gently shook his head and softly said, "These two people are not ordinary. I advise you not to start a conflict with them now." Qin Yun's face immediately twitched when these words were uttered. To be able to make this fellow say such words, it already proved that the two black-robed people were not ordinary. But the Do Qi inheritance. Doesn't Xiao Yan also want to obtain the Do Qi inheritance? Humph, given his character, as long as he has determined his target, he will definitely chase after it. Why don't we hand this mess over to him? It will not be too late for us to act after both sides are seriously injured. Moreover, I still have a good thing that I have yet to give to all of you. TSK TSK TSK. A strange laugh was emitted from under the black robe after he finished speaking. Immediately, he ignored Qin Yun and took the lead to fly out of the hall. As for Yan Hua and Yan Lai, their bodies were stunned for a long time until Qin Yun and the black-robed person arrived in front of the stone door. Only then did they follow with hearts filled with anger. Seeing Qin Yun's back as he stepped out of the stone door, an extremely cold killing intent finally surfaced on Yan Hua's and Yan Lai's faces. If it were not for the latter, how would Yan He have died? The three of them had been working hard for him for so many years. However, this fellow had always ordered them around as he pleased. Even though they had tried their best to curry favor with him, all they got in return was merciless mockery. With Yan He's death today, the two of them were finally disheartened by Qin Yun. At the same time, Yiluotian, Murongxian, and the others, who had kept the Do Qi inheritance in the other two large halls, were also withdrawing from the path they had come from. Qin Yun swiftly caught up with the black-robed person after the remaining 4 people in Qin Yun's group left the large hall. His heart was extremely curious about the words that the latter had said earlier. From the words of the black-robed person, Qin Yun could tell that this fellow had already prepared something for them. However, he had been unwilling to take it out. At this moment, their group had already lost 2 9-star Do Di. This was quite a big loss for Qin Yun. He wondered if the thing that the black-robed person had mentioned would be able to make up for his loss. Under Qin Yun's hot pursuit and questioning, the black-robed person appeared to be in a difficult position and stopped. Yan Hua and the other person behind him also swiftly followed. However, their expressions were somewhat gloomy. Under Qin Yun's somewhat impatient gaze, the black-robed person extended a shriveled hand. The storage ring on his finger flashed slightly. Immediately, a jade bottle appeared in his hand. Qin Yun's eyes carried some doubt. Yan Hua and the other person behind him were completely uninterested in this matter at this moment. They only wanted to know how to kill Xiao Yan and take revenge for Yan He. What is this? Qin Yun frowned and curiously asked. Humph humph, this is a medicinal pill that can raise your cultivation. The black-robed person laughed strangely. His tone carried some pride. However, these words caused Qin Yun to coldly snort in disdain when he heard them. This young master has already consumed the extreme transformation pill. If you give it to me now, it will no longer have the slightest effect. Don't tell me that you don't even understand this principle? Did I say that this is the extreme transformation pill? The person under the black robe once again emitted a strange laugh. His hand shook slightly and the jade bottle shattered. 6 perfectly round medicinal pills appeared in his hand. If Xiao Yan was present at this moment, he would be able to immediately recognize them. These so-called medicinal pills were the unique goo medicine that Yi Luotian had refined, the dry leaf goo. Although the dry leaf goo did indeed have the effect of raising the cultivation of an elite Dou Di, once they were consumed, they would definitely become Yi Luotian's puppet. Their life and death would be in his hands. Unfortunately, the current Qin Yun's group was completely unaware of this. After the black-robed person boasted a couple of times, Yan Hua and the other person were the first to impatiently consume one. Indeed, although their strength did not break through to the powerful origin transformation stage, they had reached the level of an advanced 9-star Dou Di. This strength was undoubtedly much stronger than before. A long while later, after seeing that the two of them were fine, Qin Yun finally attempted to consume one. His cultivation swiftly rose to the middle stage of a 7-star Dou Di. It was even close to the advanced stage of a 7-star Dou Di. Unfortunately, one could not consume too many of these medicinal pills. Otherwise, he would have unhesitatingly consumed the remaining 3. The black-robed person laughed strangely in his heart when he saw the 3 of them consume the dry leaf goo. Immediately, he led the 3 of them and walked back the way they had come. Let's go. There is still a good show waiting for us behind. At the same time, there were less than 20 people left in the large hall following the gradual departure of everyone in disappointment. Xiao Yan and the 2 black-robed people were also present. Behind the 2 of them was the stone statue that faced Tianju. The 2 black-robed people stood side by side. Their gazes looked at Xiao Yan through their black robes. They did not say anything, but their faces were filled with mocking smiles. As for Xiao Yan's heart was filled with hesitation when he saw that there were fewer and fewer people in the large hall. The 2 of them had already obtained the Dou Qi inheritance. Why were they still unwilling to leave? Xiao Yan did not believe that they were afraid of him. He was unable to even detect the other party's cultivation. From this, it could be seen that they either possessed some kind of treasure that could hide their aura or they had absolute strength. Comparing the 2 of them, Xiao Yan believed the latter more. Since the other party was not afraid of him but still chose to remain in this place, Xiao Yan could only come to a conclusion in his heart after thinking for a while. They had also discovered the strangeness of this stone statue. Xiao Yan's heart immediately sank when he thought of this. If that was the case, it was likely that he would have to compete with them no matter what. Xiao Xian's revival was extremely important in Xiao Yan's heart. No matter what price he had to pay, he could not continue waiting this time around. However, after Xiao Yan pondered for a long time in his heart, he finally made up his mind. He decided to try his luck and hoped that the 2 of them did not discover the strangeness of the stone statue. Xiao Yan turned around and was about to leave the large hall. Only when he turned around did he realize that there were only the 3 of them left in the large hall. However, just as Xiao Yan was about to leave, one of the 2 people behind him, who appeared to be slightly shorter, took 2 steps forward. At the same time, an old mocking voice was faintly emitted. Mr. Xiao Yan, it has been many years since we last met. How have you been? Xiao Yan's foot, which had originally been lifted, suddenly paused in midair the instant these words were emitted. He lifted his head and his eyes were filled with shock. Translator. Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Chapter 946. The scent of blood was mixed in the air within the empty large hall, forming clusters of dense blood fog. Numerous corpses were lying in a disorderly manner. The scene appeared extremely horrifying. At this moment, there were still 3 living people in the large hall. One of them was Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan was the first to arrive at this place. At this moment, Xiao Yan's body was as stiff as a statue. One of his feet was lifted into the air and stopped less than 2 inches from the ground. The expression on his face was particularly interesting. The previous solemn expression was no longer present. On the contrary, it was replaced with an extremely shocked expression. His pair of pitch-black eyes were filled with disbelief. It was a long while later before Xiao Yan gradually recovered from the shock that he had been in for a long while. While Xiao Yan was in a daze, the 2 black-robed men behind him did not disturb him. They only took off the loose black robes that covered their faces, revealing their true faces in the hall that was filled with the smell of blood. When Xiao Yan turned around and looked at the 2 people behind him with a surprised gaze, the familiar and amiable smile that was revealed on their faces caused Xiao Yan to feel as though he was dreaming. Both parties stood still on the spot and smiled as they looked at each other for a long time. Finally, Xiao Yan's face was filled with excitement as he heavily cupped his hands toward the old man who had just spoken. He bowed and spoke with a respectful tone, one word at a time. Junior Xiao Yan pays his respects to Elder Luo. At this moment, the blood fog in the air automatically scattered, forming a pure tunnel between the 2 parties. At this moment, old Luo was similarly looking at Xiao Yan with a smile. His old face was filled with a pleased and satisfied expression. This so-called Elder Luo was naturally Luo Ao, whom he had not seen for many years in Emerald Green City. As for the other young man beside him, he was naturally Xiao Yan's first friend after coming to Yuanwu continent, Luo Jin. Cuckoo, little fellow, it has been many years since we last met. Your achievements have caused the old me to sigh in admiration. Luo Ao smiled and nodded to Xiao Yan as he stepped forward. The powerful fighting strength that Xiao Yan had displayed earlier was something that even he had never heard of. Even in the entire continent, it seemed that there was no one among the younger generation whom he had met who could contend with Xiao Yan. The latter involuntarily smiled awkwardly when he heard this. Immediately, his gaze landed on Luo Jin by the side. Without the obstruction of the black robe, the latter's current cultivation was completely exposed in front of Xiao Yan's eyes. An intermediate 8-star Do D. This kind of training speed was even more exaggerated than his own. TSK. An intermediate 8-star Do D. Your training speed is really frightening. Do you want to find time to spar with me? Xiao Yan's eyes revealed an amazed expression. In less than 10 years, he had leaped from a mere bandit to an elite 8-star Do D. This kind of training speed could really be said to be world-shocking. However, the last sentence of his words caused Luo Jin's entire body to quiver. He hurriedly waved his hand and used his gaze to viciously glare at Luo Jin. He snappily said, "You are purposely mocking me. Although it is true that I am an intermediate 8-star Do D, I have clearly seen earlier that even the advanced 8-star Do D Jian Ming was unable to endure a punch from you, much less me. I should also mention that you are only an intermediate 6-star Do D." Ugh! Luo Jin's words caused Xiao Yan and Luo Ao to be speechless. They immediately laughed involuntarily. Luo Jin helplessly shrugged his shoulders. His face was filled with an innocent expression. What he said was indeed correct. With Xiao Yan's fighting strength, he could be considered a kind of heaven-defying existence among all the elite Do D on the continent. A 6-star Do D was able to kill an 8-star Do D. Even a 9-star Do D had been killed by him. This kind of fighting strength could be said to be frightening. Cuckoo, if I have not guessed wrongly, the reason why you have stayed until the end is because of this. The 3 of them chatted for a while. Immediately, Luo Ao changed the topic and returned to the main topic. The 3 of them turned around and simultaneously looked at the enormous stone statue at the deepest part of the large hall. At this moment, there was no one beside them. Xiao Yan's heart suddenly relaxed. His gaze also became a little more careful when he looked at the stone statue. That's right. My aim for entering the ancient tomb this time around is actually not because of these Do-Chi inheritances. Instead, you are here to obtain the spiritual source strength of Tianju? Luo Ao raised his eyebrows slightly. He seemed to have heard something from Xiao Yan's words. It seemed that the latter knew that the spiritual source strength of Tianju existed in this ancient tomb from the very beginning. However, all of this was not important. What was important was that these words of Xiao Yan allowed them to keep the Do-Chi inheritance in a logical manner. In this way, they did not need to care about Xiao Yan's feelings after they obtained the Do-Chi inheritance. This action of Xiao Yan was purposefully giving up the Do-Chi inheritance to them. Of course, regardless of whether Xiao Yan was willing to give it up, This would more or less cause Luo Ao and Luo Ao to feel a little apologetic. Hence, the spiritual source strength sealed within the stone statue naturally became a tool to smooth out this layer of apologetic feeling. The three of them arrived in front of the stone statue and cast their gazes on it. Luo Ao glanced at Xiao Yan and gently nodded his head as a sign of acknowledgement. Seeing this, Xiao Yan's thoughts moved. He took out a strand of spiritual source strength from the soul bead and slowly approached the stone statue. After which, he poured it into the stone statue through its eyes. Hum hum hum. Immediately, a golden light rapidly rose from the surface of the stone statue and enveloped the entire stone statue. Luo Ao's eyes immediately flashed when he saw this. Surprise flashed across his old face. He could tell that this layer of golden light was a kind of formation. Moreover, its rank did not seem to be low. It had been left behind by Tianju specifically to protect the stone statue. With his extraordinary eyesight and experience, Luo Ao could tell that as long as there was the protection of this special formation, the stone statue would instantly explode if someone tried to forcefully steal the spiritual source strength within the stone statue. At the same time, the enormous spiritual source strength within it would also explode. I didn't expect this old guy to be so careful. It seems that this should be a kind of rank 6 formation. It's just that the method used is not very pure. Luo Ao expressed his opinion as he looked at the layer of golden light on the stone statue. On the other hand, Luo Jin could not help but raise his eyebrows when he heard this. He said in surprise, "A rank 6 formation master? Isn't that the same as you?" "Shut up, brat. If it weren't for the fact that this old man was too lazy to cultivate, how could a dead man from 1,000 years ago compare to me?" As soon as Luo Jin finished speaking, Luo Ao hurriedly shut him up. Then he glanced at the formation in front of him again and said with slight ridicule, "Although it's a rank 6 formation in this old man's opinion, this Tianju probably just happened to break through to rank 6 before he died." Hearing this, Luo Jin chuckled and glanced at Luo Ao with a mocking look in his eyes. He thought to himself, "Old man, when you broke through to rank 6, you were already an origin king, right? And this guy? He was an early returnance expert and a class 6 formation master. Just this aspect alone was enough to make Luo Ao incomparable to him. If it were not for the fact that the esteemed Tianju had died for no reason, his accomplishments would have been far greater. Translator, Atlas Studios Editor. Atlas Studios. Chapter 947. While Luo Ao and Luo Jin were teasing each other in the outside world, Xiao Yan was currently pouring wave after wave of enormous spiritual strength into the stone statue. At the same time, his consciousness also followed into the stone statue. As his consciousness entered the stone statue, Xiao Yan felt as if he had entered the depths of the ocean. A terrifying pressure ruthlessly squeezed his soul, almost crushing him to pieces. What a terrifying soul pressure! Xiao Yan's heart immediately felt terrified. Such a frightening spiritual pressure was something that he had never felt anywhere else. Xiao Yan did not doubt that his consciousness would definitely be shattered by this enormous spiritual strength if he were to continue staying in this place for a long time. At the same time that Xiao Yan's spiritual strength was facing an enormous pressure, the expression of his actual body in the outside world had also instantly turned pale. The expression on his face also became distorted. His body trembled repeatedly, appearing as though he was enduring something. This alerted the two people beside him. "What's going on with him?" Luo Jin frowned. He could not help but worry for Xiao Yan. Seeing this, Luo Ao could not help but frown as well. With a solemn tone, he said, "This kid seems to be under the suppression of the soul origin within the stone statue. After all, it's a rank 6 soul strength. It's several times stronger than this kid's. If he stays here for too long, he'll probably be crushed by the soul strength inside." "What? Fifth grandfather, hurry up and save him. You can't let anything happen to Xiao Yan." Hearing Luo Ao's words, Luo Jin's expression immediately tensed up. With a thought, his soul strength immediately gushed out and he was about to step forward. "Come back." Just as Luo Jin was about to act, he was pulled back by Luo Ao. At the same time, the soul strength that had gushed out was forcefully withdrawn. "You brat, I've never seen you care so much about a girl. Why is it that when it comes to Xiao Yan, you're even more worried about him than he is?" Luo Ao pursed his lips and looked at Luo Jin with a strange expression. Soon after, he turned his gaze back to Xiao Yan and said, "If he really wants to come out, he can do so at any time. Moreover, I guarantee that he won't be harmed by the soul origin within. But look at him right now. He clearly wants to continue. Since this is his own will, why do we have to forcefully stop him? Is it to prevent him from being injured? Hearing this, Luo Jin frowned as he looked at Xiao Yan, who was turning paler and paler. His heart was filled with hesitation. He could imagine that Xiao Yan must have suffered a lot to obtain his current strength. If he did not pay a price, how could he repay him? The latter was the limit of the pain he could endure. Through repeated attempts and challenges, he broke through the limit again and again, reaping the rewards from the pain and suffering. The battle results that Xiao Yan had established were something that Luo Jin could only hope to catch up to. But if he doesn't come out, don't worry. If anything happens, I'll pull his soul strength out of there at the first moment. You're not the only one who doesn't want anything to happen to him. With such a good seedling, I can't bear to let anything happen to him. If he can continue to grow, this old man believes that one day, this continent will definitely tremble, just like that person back then. Muttering softly, Luo Ao's deep old eyes involuntarily flickered as he recalled a certain legend in his heart. 1,000 years ago, a mysterious man was born on the continent and grew at an extraordinary speed. In less than 100 years, that mysterious man had transformed into the strongest person on the continent. Even the current #1 sect on the continent could not compare to him. When he broke through to the legendary realm, the entire continent would change. No one had ever seen his true appearance and no one had ever been able to converse with him. The only information they knew about him was that the mysterious man had beautiful long hair of different colors on his head. It was elegant and extraordinary. While Luo Ao was lost in his thoughts, Xiao Yan was still bitterly holding on at this moment. The enormous spiritual pressure made it difficult for him to breathe. Under the suppression of Tianju's spiritual origin energy, the spiritual strength that was constantly pouring in was fiercely compressed together, unable to spread out, let alone refine this spiritual origin energy. Soon, the pain that Xiao Yan's consciousness sensed became increasingly intense. At this moment, Xiao Yan could clearly sense that his spiritual strength was about to be unable to endure any longer. If he did not choose to withdraw at this moment, it was likely that his consciousness would be forcefully shattered by this spiritual essence strength within a couple of minutes. At that time, even if he did not die, he would definitely leave behind a sequela that he could not recover from. In the outside world, seeing that Xiao Yan's face was becoming increasingly pale, Luo Ao finally could not hold it in any longer. He knew that Xiao Yan desperately wanted to obtain the spiritual origin energy within the stone statue. However, based on Xiao Yan's current state, it was destined that he would not be able to extract the spiritual origin energy. Damn it, do I have no choice but to withdraw? Feeling the increasingly powerful spiritual pressure, Xiao Yan unwillingly cursed in his heart. At the same time, in the outside world, Luo Ao was preparing to take action and pull Xiao Yan's spiritual strength and consciousness out of the stone statue. However, it was also at this moment that the storage ring on Xiao Yan's finger suddenly flashed. A jade bottle flew out of it without any forewarning. Soon after, a wave of spiritual strength spread out from the jade bottle. A bang sounded and the palm-sized jade bottle immediately burst apart. After which, Luo Ao and his granddaughter clearly saw a palm-sized cream-white energy cluster emit a swoosh sound as it entered the stone statue. That is. Luo Ao's expression involuntarily froze when he saw the milky white ball of energy. Soon after, he stopped in his tracks. This was because he clearly sensed that after the milky white ball of energy entered the stone statue, the powerful spiritual pressure within it instantly disappeared. At this moment, Xiao Yan's body also suddenly relaxed. The pain that his spiritual strength had to endure also abruptly disappeared. It was as if he had just experienced a huge battle. Inside the stone statue, Xiao Yan finally had the time to properly inspect the space within the stone statue after the pressure was removed. The milky white spiritual strength was like a white fog that drifted in all directions. Apart from a stretch of white, nothing else could be seen. Although he did not know what had happened, Xiao Yan still carefully spread out his spiritual strength and carefully probed the interior of the dense fog. Suddenly, the fog in front of Xiao Yan parted on its own. It agglomerated into a substance-like corridor on both sides, leading the way for Xiao Yan. With curiosity in his heart, Xiao Yan cautiously walked along the corridor. After a few turns, a large ball of fog finally dispersed in front of Xiao Yan's eyes. The figure of an old man in a brocade robe appeared in front of Xiao Yan. Seeing this old man, Xiao Yan's expression was slightly stunned. Immediately after, he compared the old man's appearance with the appearance of the stone statue outside. The instant the two appearances perfectly merged in his heart, Xiao Yan could not help but exclaim. Esteemed Tianju. Mobile version update website. Chapter 948. The moment Xiao Yan exclaimed, the old man, who was standing absent-mindedly in front of him, also seemed to be alarmed. He lifted his eyelids and looked at Xiao Yan. Shoo! Seeing that Xiao Yan could not help but open his mouth once again, the old man helplessly made a shushing gesture to Xiao Yan. Immediately, he turned his gaze back to the space above his palm. A palm-sized cream-white energy cluster was slowly floating in the air. That is... Xiao Yan was shocked when he saw the ball of light. He recognized it at a glance. It was Xiao Xian's soul remnant. But why was it in his hands? What did he want to do? Xiao Yan's face gradually turned gloomy as thoughts flashed through his mind. Don't worry, kid. I'm just curious and surprised. Back then, I spent my entire life trying to find the first scroll of the Returnance technique, but I couldn't find it in the end. I didn't expect to encounter it here after being dead for nearly 1,000 years. Haha, it's really fate. As if sensing the change in Xiao Yan's emotions, the old man shook his head and sighed bitterly. He stared at the ball of Xiao Xian's soul remnant above his palm with a regretful expression. Xiao Yan calmed down a little after hearing the old man's words. However, his eyes were still filled with caution when he looked at the old man. Although this fellow had been dead for nearly 1,000 years, just by relying on this enormous spiritual strength, it was likely that Xiao Yan would not have much ability to resist if Tianju wanted to do anything to him. Therefore, in order to be safe, Xiao Yan had no choice but to be cautious. I can see that he seems to be very important to you. The old man didn't pay too much attention to Xiao Yan's emotional changes. At the same time, he extended his palm, and the ball of light above his palm slowly floated towards Xiao Yan. Xiao Yan caught it carefully in a hurry. Only after confirming that the old man had not done anything to it did he let out a sigh of relief inside. Don't worry, I don't have any thoughts about him. I'm a person from 1,000 years ago after all. Even if I was reborn now, there's nothing for me to fight over. Not to mention, I've lived enough. The reason why I risked my life to break through to Returnance was because I wanted to know if the Returnance technique had a way to break through. Unfortunately, I seem to have proven that it doesn't. The old man shrugged helplessly when he reached the end of his sentence. He was self-deprecating. Xiao Yan remained silent in this regard because this point was very easy to understand. The Returnance technique could allow him to progress smoothly on the path of cultivation, allowing him to become a supreme expert in just 100 years. However, everything had its pros and cons. There were 2 cons to the Returnance technique. One was the 3 barriers that were the hardest to surmount, and the other was that the Returnance technique was split into 3 scrolls. If he could not cultivate the 3 scrolls separately, he would not be able to become a true expert. In other words, the outcome of the esteemed Tianju was understandable. Of course, he had already considered this possibility in the past. However, for the sake of pursuing the path of the strong, he would not hesitate even if he had to give up his life. On this point, Xiao Yan shared the same feeling. Suddenly, the old man and the young man raised their heads at the same time and stared at each other. Ha 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 ha. A few seconds later, laughter rang out. The 2 of them had a tacit understanding. Although they were not from the same era, they were the same kind of people. If it were not for the teasing of time, they probably would have become good friends despite their age difference. The little guy's pretty good. You've come here to save him, right? Tianju did not hesitate and went straight to the point. At this moment, Xiao Yan had also let down his guard against the old man. He smiled and nodded. He took a step forward and cupped his hands respectfully towards Tianju. The revival of my ancestor requires the support of the soul source energy. Therefore, I implore Senior to save my ancestor. Once his voice sounded, Xiao Yan's bent waist became even deeper. The expression on his face was also filled with respect. Hee, this old man is now just a remnant soul, and I won't be able to survive for much longer. Furthermore, since your ancestor has also cultivated the Returnance technique, it can be said that we are of the same origin. Furthermore, this old man purposely left behind the power of this soul origin in order to give it to a fated person. If my soul origin can really revive your ancestor, this might not be a bad thing. Furthermore, at the end of his words, The old man fell silent. Xiao Yan did not feel anything strange. Immediately after, Xiao Xian's remnant soul in his arms flew forward uncontrollably and returned to the old man's hands. The old man formed a seal with his hands, and the milky white mist in the surroundings seemed to have received some kind of command and quickly gathered towards the milky white energy ball between his hands. Seeing this scene, Xiao Yan's expression changed slightly, and he hurriedly said, "Senior, my ancestor's remnant soul is too weak now. If you use this method of direct fusion, I'm afraid." "Don't worry, if you forcibly fuse with him, you may need to consider this point, but I'm giving him my soul source energy on my own initiative. Under my control, my soul source energy will not have any backlash. As for your ancestor, with his current weak state, I believe he won't resist my fusion. In this way, not only will the fusion speed be faster, but the soul source energy he obtains will also be more complete. This is only beneficial for your ancestor." Esteemed Tianju smiled. At the same time, a huge amount of soul energy poured into Xiao Xian's remnant soul. Sure enough, as he had said, the fusion process of the soul source energy was particularly smooth. It was even faster than when Xiao Yan helped to refine it in the past. Perhaps this was because the two of them cultivated the same cultivation method. In any case, with the support of esteemed Tianju's soul source energy, Xiao Xian's chances of recovery would be greater. Thinking of this, Xiao Yan could not help but feel a little excited. After so many years, if he saw Xiao Xian's ancestor again, what kind of atmosphere would it be? Inside the stone statue, a huge amount of soul energy was fusing with Xiao Xian's remnant soul at a speed visible to the naked eye. In order not to affect it, Xiao Yan consciously withdrew. He believed that with esteemed Tianju personally controlling it, nothing would happen to Xiao Xian. In the outside world, seeing Xiao Yan open his eyes, Luo Ao could not help but frown slightly. Luo Jin also looked at Xiao Yan. "Is the absorption complete?" Luo Ao frowned. He did not feel any change in Xiao Yan's soul energy. Xiao Yan merely smiled and shook his head when he heard this. He lifted his gaze and looked at the stone statue in front of him. He was just about to open his mouth when a powerful energy storm suddenly swept over from outside of the large hall. With just one strike, it shattered the outer wall of the large hall. Numerous densely packed crack lines swiftly covered the wall. Soon after, the powerful energy storm completely destroyed the entire wall in front of Xiao Yan's shocked eyes. Translator M. Editor M. Chapter 949. The powerful energy powder storm instantly destroyed the outer walls of the large hall. Even the formation that was connected to the entire ancient tomb was destroyed along with it. The sudden appearance of this scene not only caused Xiao Yan, but also Luo Ao and Luo Jin by the side to be startled for an instant. What happened? The three of them swiftly exchanged glances. Their bodies immediately moved as they flew forward. They flew past the ruins in front of them and arrived in front of the large hall. Xiao Yan involuntarily turned his head to look at the stone statue in the depths of the large hall. After confirming that there was no mistake, he looked to the front with a solemn face. The murderous intent in his eyes was sharp. The three of them swept their gazes over. Only after observing for a while did they notice that a large group of black figures was swiftly flashing in front of the three of them. Battle cries were transmitted into the ears of the three of them from afar. From the looks of it, someone self-destructed just now. Luo Ao narrowed his eyes and spoke in an unconcerned manner when he saw this scene. At this moment, Xiao Yan's eyes were staring intently at the group of human figures. His gaze stared at the front of the group. Those people seemed to belong to the same group. The people behind them were chasing after this small group that had only a few people left. The small group was in a panic and did not know where to go. It seemed that they had no choice but to flee here. However, Xiao Yan was not concerned about the direction in which this group of people was fleeing. Instead, he was concerned about the identity of this group of people. When the group of people gradually approached, their line of sight became increasingly clear. Finally, Xiao Yan was able to clearly see the group of people. The remaining 4 people were all wearing white robes. From the style of their white robes, one could tell at a glance that they belonged to the same faction. At this moment, 3 of the 4 people had the appearance of old men. Only a young man was crazily fleeing under the protection of these 3 people. This group of 4 was Murong Xian's group. The Do Qi inheritance on their bodies had been discovered by others. This was why they had been crazily chased by this group of people. After a big battle, A portion of the group had died due to their inability to fight. Another portion had chosen to self-destruct in order to protect Murong Xian. It was because of this that they were able to delay the group behind them until now. Unfortunately, with the development of the situation, the people behind him quickly caught up to him again. Humph, this old man wants to see how many more times you can self-destruct. A linen-robed old man in the group wore a ferocious smile on his face. He ordered the surrounding elite Do Di to wildly chase after the four people in front. This person was undoubtedly Yi Luotian. The distance between the two sides was getting closer and closer. The attacks from behind were also constantly exploding on the ground behind the four of them. If the four of them were to slow down even a little, they would be bombarded by the rain of attacks. Damn it! They're trying to kill us all. Murong Xian couldn't help but reveal a trace of despair on his face. As he felt the attacks coming closer and closer behind him, his heart had already sunk to the bottom of the valley. If handing over the Do Chi inheritance was enough, they would have left this place a long time ago. However, in the end, they realized that not only did this group of people want to obtain the Do Chi inheritance, they also wanted to kill everyone in this ancient tomb. They had no intention of letting anyone go. Young master, don't worry. This subordinate will definitely rescue you even if I have to risk my old life. You must not despair. The white-haired old man by the side continued to encourage Murong Xian. No matter what, he would not let anything happen to Murong Xian. If anything happened to the latter, he would not be able to rest in peace even if he died. Uncle Quan, let's go together. Murong Xian clenched his teeth. He was just about to grab the old man's wrist when the old man was one step ahead. He suddenly grabbed Murong Xian's wrist and a powerful force immediately gathered on his arm. He violently flung Murong Xian away. Soon after, Do Chi gushed out from his palm and turned into a fierce gust of wind that violently pushed the three people beside him away. As for himself, he was already exposed to the attacks of the group behind him. Ha 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 ha. A group of trash. Come, let this old man meet you. A wild laugh was emitted from the old man's mouth as he turned around. At the same time, the Do Chi within his body became wild and violent. Soon after, the old man's body suddenly exploded when the group of people behind him arrived. Bang! An earth-shaking energy wave swept out in all directions. Wherever it passed, the city below was completely destroyed. At the same time, it also exposed the numerous mysterious symbols under the surface of the ground. This is. In front of the ruins of the large hall, Luo Ao and Luo Jin's expressions changed slightly when they saw this scene. Only then did they understand in their hearts why such a useless city would be built in this enormous ancient tomb. This was not some hobby of Tianju. He was merely using it to cover up the entire formation below. I'm afraid that this great array is not weak even among the rank 6 arrays. Luo Ao's eyes hardened. There was a faint premonition in his heart. Uncle Quan. Murong Xian's heart was incomparably furious as he watched the old man who had accompanied him for many years die with his own eyes. He had never imagined that there would be such a day between him and Murong Quan. Old Quan, have you really died just like that? The other old man by the side could not help but sigh. Tears involuntarily surged from his eyes. An old man was full of emotions. Moreover, this was a good brother who had accompanied him for his entire life. At this moment, the originally beating heart of this old man seemed to have suddenly stopped. The anger on his old face had also mostly disappeared in the blink of an eye. Ha! I want all of you to die. Murong Xian's mouth suddenly emitted a hoarse and furious cry. At the same time, his body moved. He ignored the people around him and actually charged toward the group of people who had once again chased after him. Young master. The hearts of the remaining 2 old men were immediately startled. They hurriedly moved and tried to give chase. However, in front of Murong Xian's great way of the wind, their speed could not compare. In the blink of an eye, Murong Xian's figure had once again appeared within the attacking range of that group of people. At this moment, even the hearts of these elite Do Di could not help but be slightly moved. How many people in the entire continent could do this for their subordinates? At this moment, even they could not help but feel some pity for Murong Xian in front of them. Huh? However, if they pitied others, who would pity them? Now, even their own lives were in the hands of Yi Luotian. If they did not obey his will, they would die. When it came to the latter, there was only fear in their hearts. Of course, this was also Yi Luotian's goal. He did not need true loyalty. He did not trust anyone. In his eyes, the relationship between the living things on this continent was only one of using and being used. Unfortunately, he was the one who used them. Very quickly, under the sorrowful and furious gazes of the two elite Dodi from the Murong clan, a dense raindrop-like bombardment ruthlessly landed on Murong Xian's body. Boom! After a series of explosions, the wind and dust scattered. Everyone focused their eyes and looked over. There was nothing at the spot where Murong Xian had been standing. What? Just as Yi Luotian's heart was slightly alarmed, two figures appeared in front of him, one after the other. One of them was Murong Xian. The other person was the one who had instantly caused Yi Luotian's expression to darken. Xiao Yan. Mobile version update website. M.